Dave Palumbo, the original mass monster in the early 90s and the original journalist and interviewer for bodybuilding, the man behind RX Muscle.
Back in the day when I would tell people to take milligrams of test a week, they thought I was nuts. They thought I was Boston Lloyd back then. I said, listen, that's the effective dosage. And then everyone started doing it. Fiber would be something that I left out of the first half of my bodybuilding career, which I think would have helped a lot of the abdominal distension I got. And I was eating so much food if I would have just studied gut health. Because as soon as you put and I see people growing better and looking better and feeling better. I know Milo says that a lot, but that's not true. You should want to get me on a show and debate me and expose me, right? If you think I'm wrong. I always went off. There was 1 year I didn't go off, and I didn't like, my physique looked tired. It didn't respond. The androgen receptors do really well when they have nothing present for a while. It's like you're rebooting your computer almost. You do this for 3 years straight, and now you might have 50% more nuclei in your body. Muscle memory is the amount of nuclei you have that never disappear throughout the rest of your life. So if you double your nuclei numbers over the course of your 25-year bodybuilding career, you permanently have those cells there. Every bodybuilder should be consuming tons of macadamia nut oil in the off season and using measured amounts in their contest prep. Because if you have ever experienced pancreatic cancer in anyone you love, it's not a fast death, it's a slow death. She deteriorated over 2 years. But I will tell you this, that almost every bodybuilder over 40 that I work with has high drug-wise, I think I did it right. Instead of using a fast-acting insulin like a Humulin R back then, I would use...
How much protein do you think is most optimal for pro bodybuilders? How you doing, brother?
Good to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, you as well. I automatically start recording, by the way, if that's okay. I realized that I should probably start telling people.
No, I don't care, but some people might. I don't know.
Yeah. I always thought it was you behind the Instagram when you were DMing me, or when RX Muscle was DMing
I think
me.
Sid does the RX Muscle one.
Probably Sid, right?
Because I have too many things to check. Yeah.
Man, I thought I already got to talk to the famous Dave Palumbo, man. This shit tricked me.
You're doing a good job with the podcast. I've seen some of your stuff.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the first one, so.
Now? What?
It's been roughly 3 years or so, but I mean,
you're doing great for 3 years.
You're the original, bro. I'm just learning from you.
Thank you. I'm trying to still be original. It's hard. You have to keep reinventing yourself. But you know what it is? It actually becomes easier because they keep creating new ways to do these things. And so as long as you keep up with the latest and greatest, you're still relevant. I think a lot of people just, that have been doing it a long time get stuck in doing it a certain way, and they won't refuse to, to modify what they do. And then it's like the magazines. Like I used to beg the owner of Steve Blackman of Muscular Development to do TV programming. I said, we'll be first. He goes, there's no business model. I said, of course not, because no one else is doing it. I said, let's just do it. And he had that magazine mentality. Like the magazine is the most important thing, and the website's kind of just a promotion for the magazine. And I tried to explain to him the magazine's not going to be around that much longer. I said, he didn't believe me.
Okay, I see. Bro's getting with the times. Okay.
Yeah, but you have to. Yeah, you have to look. When we first started doing podcasts and stuff like that, and TV shows, we streamed it right from our website. There was no YouTube wasn't monetizable then. Mm-hmm. So if people wanted to see my stuff, they had to come to rxmuscle.com and watch it on there. I
gotta be wild, bro. I can't even imagine doing that. I feel like I wouldn't even.
People told me I was crazy. They're like, you can't do a TV show. I said, why not? Because you could. It was hard to do an audio podcast back then. Mm-hmm. Like you had to call into a call center because they just didn't. The bandwidth wasn't there, and if you didn't have bandwidth, it would like stop and start and. So we used there was a website called Live. We should probably be doing this on the air, but there was a website called Livestream, which is where we started. We had to pay for an account, and we would stream to their site, and they would be able to stream because they had the bandwidth.
Okay, gotcha.
And, that's how we started. But I don't want to. You ask me whatever you want. I'll answer anything.
Okay, cool. Well, I just wanted to say before I ask you anything that I just love how you always say straight up just what you believe. Like you're just so straightforward and you just say your thoughts, and it's great, man. Because like I think people are finally opening up in the last couple of years in bodybuilding, which I think is super cool to see because it's been very helpful for people that are new to the industry. But you've always been that way. So much respect for that.
It's hard because you get in trouble a lot when you open it up.
For sure.
And I've gotten in trouble plenty, believe it, over the years.
Hey man, it shows that you're doing something right though, because you don't give a fuck, and plus that gives people you know, that way we can trust you because you're always just going to say what you fucking think.
Well, you know what it is? I always said that if you're honest with people, they'll believe you, number one. Number two, then you can sell them things because they know that you're not going to take advantage of them, you know? And so I always was very transparent on everything I did. Even if I'm not going to be the number one sales guy in everything I sell, at least people know that what I'm selling is legit. And I think that's to me, authenticity is more important than how much money I make. That's just my my mantra, my character. You know?
No, I feel the same way too, which is why I've gotten in trouble with a lot of my sponsors and shit just because I don't know. I just don't.
You refuse to compromise.
I don't know. Like, there's a certain level. If I can like be authentic and be organic about it, then I'll talk about it. But if it's something that I have to like push, be like, yo, there's this sale for a specific pre-workout on the. I don't know, man. I just can't do it. It pisses me the fuck off.
I know.
That's why I like these platforms. But yeah. Anyways, appreciate you talking about all bodybuilding science, like bro science, so openly as well, man. There was actually like totally random, but I actually just got a DM from a guy on Instagram like an hour ago. Account was like Arms and Arms or something. And we kind of settled and decided on what we believe is true. And I also told them that I am on your side with probably a majority of everything you said in this clip. But he mentioned that on Jay Cutler's podcast, there's this clip of you saying that potentially AR diminishes during a cycle. And I think I think some people misconstrued what you said because it sounded like you were talking about, later on you kind of went more in depth and you're like, because when you jump back on or after you've been off for a while, you resensitize to the gear. So when you jump back on, you know, things work a little bit more effectively. But I think some people were thinking like, oh, bro is trying to say that like AR does not upregulate when you're on gear. And it sounded like people thought that you were talking about like the amount of receptors or androgen receptors in general, rather than like your sensitivity to gear.
Well, I mean, that dictates your sensitivity to gear would be how many androgen receptors you have. Right.
Would it, or does it only to my, so here's my belief is that, so as you get bigger and as you take more, you gain more androgen receptors, right? And by gaining more androgens,
why would that? I mean, if you have more muscle tissue, I mean, theoretically, you would have more androgen receptors, but you don't. We're talking about androgen receptor sensitivity let's talk about per muscle fiber, okay? So your androgen receptors are on the nucleus, right, of the muscle cell. They're not on the cell membrane like it would be for protein hormones. So the more nuclei you have, obviously, if you're producing new muscle cells via hyperplasia, you know, from taking growth hormone or just from extreme training, that's causing new satellite cells to become, or stem cells to become new muscle fibers, you theoretically have more quantity-wise, you have more androgen receptors. By the way, I have a bandage on here because I got bit by one of my snakes before we filmed.
You're good, bro.
As a side note.
That's crazy, by the way.
But
casually.
You know, so you would have, if you added up all your androgen receptors, you probably have more the bigger you are because you have more muscle cells.
Which is what
we're talking about, how many receptors
upregulating
per nuclei you would have. And the longer you're on, you know, your body, and the more gear you're on, your body eventually says, wait a minute, we can't respond forever. This is, you know, we have to, so it cuts back some of the androgen receptors because there's too much response. And that's just a preservation mechanism. Now, what initiates that to happen? Who the heck knows? No one's really figured out. Is it myostatin?
Exactly.
Is it something else? I don't know. But it certainly happens because when you first start taking gear, the first 6-8 weeks, you respond really well. And then you continue to respond, but you don't respond as well. Yeah. And it's because your androgen receptor density per nuclei decreases. Now, if you're on for a full year straight, okay, and then you think, all right, you know what, I'm going to go to, you know, HRT levels, which are still higher than what we naturally produce, you know, you're going to get some sort of a regeneration of the, you know, you're going to get some sensitivity, but I think your body's going to upregulate receptors a little bit. But if you remove the stimuli completely, you take away the testosterone, the body doesn't know that you've taken away testosterone and that your body's not producing any naturally right now. It just sees a complete lack of testosterone stimulating these androgen receptors. So it assumes that there's just not enough receptor density. So it increases the receptor density per nuclei. So on each nuclei, now you have more receptors because it's looking for testosterone that's just not there.
Is
And
that
you can
different
trick
than
your body over a short period of time to produce more receptors. And that's what you're doing by going off. I'm not telling you to, it's not going to happen indefinitely. It's only,
Mhm.
maybe after a month or two, the body's going to say, wait a minute, the receptor increasing is by us increasing receptors, we're not getting a better response. Something's missing here, but you have tricked your body to produce more androgen receptors. And you can prove that by as soon as you go back on, you get a huge response.
Yeah.
Ask Kevin Levrone after taking off, 3 months when he goes back on a cycle, he responds insanely,
Do you believe that still happens if you just come to a actual like TRT dose?
Yeah, I don't think I don't get you the full. I know you don't get the full regeneration or the regen. I think you almost have to starve the cell of testosterone so it can say, holy, something's not right. Because if you go to HRT levels, the body's still getting stimulated. The androgen receptors are still being stimulated. So there's no reason for them to start increasing their density numbers because they're not, there's nothing missing. It's still getting what it needs. You have to subject it to nothing for it to do that reboot, so to speak.
Okay.
That's just I've observed empirically, and it just makes sense scientifically because every receptor system in the body works like that.
Gotcha. What's up, homies? I'm back at my new place now in Vegas, and we just came out with some new shirts for the Trensparent merch. None of the basic shit. Now we got some new sick styles, a little bit of a metal and rock inspired, some other shit, and then also a bunch of new colors. So you guys want to check that out on the site? That's www.icons, spelled AYKONS, icons.com/Nile. That'll automatically apply the Nile discount code and get you right to the site where we have the new designs up. And some of the stuff like the cutoff are 380 GSM French terry cotton, so pretty high quality stuff that were helped design by my boy Dion, one of my best friends in the world. This is the guy that he and I went through a lot in life in the last decade as our best friend Ryan passed away, and I'm really happy that I got to do this with him. But anyways, this is out, so if you guys ever need anything or you have any complaints, I'm fucking here. Just let me know. Let's ride this shit out and grab life by the balls, baby. Peace. From what I've seen anecdotally, especially from all the guests that I've had on, it just seems to me like I've always been curious on whether or not coming out completely versus coming off on, say, like an actual average TRT dose would have any substantial difference in your long-term gains. But I have been able to tell that I think our discussions have covered that it's pretty clear that no matter what, even if you go off on a quote-unquote health phase, even if you don't need to, because your blood work looks great, just coming off, say, like for 12 weeks of the year or something, for example, I just feel like people tend to see more gains overall.
Definitely lowering your dosage from 1,000, 2 grams of gear to down to 100 or 200 milligrams a week of gear is obviously it could still create some sort of a regeneration effect of androgen receptors, but it's just not as extreme. And what the truth is it really that hard to stop taking drugs for 8 weeks? I mean, the whole year? No, it's not. And so why are people so adverse to it? I mean, if you just, it's like they can't train if they're not on gear. It's like it's the weirdest thing. It's almost like I believe psychologically people should be forced to do it because it's almost like they psychologically can't. It's like a crutch they need to use. And I don't see any purpose to that. I don't see why you can't just stop gear for 8 weeks. The first 4 weeks is like you're on HRT because all the gear that's in your system is still going to be there. So it's really only 4 weeks you're going off. You can't stay off gear for 4 weeks. You have psychological problems if you can't do that.
So here's what I think. I think it's kind of a similar psychological aspect to me feeling like it's tough for me to deload, because it generally is hard for me to deload. However, for me, I think the understanding that coming off for 8 weeks is going to yield you better gains, like looking forward to the fact that you're going to blow back up by the time you jump back on, which everybody does when they do jump back on. Sure. I think that's the part that makes you feel like, okay, I'm making progress in these 8 weeks, even though it doesn't look like it. But I think people just a lot of the people that don't do that just haven't really gotten that through their heads yet, because I think it's only becoming more clear in this last year from all these podcasts and these discussions that like, this is something that you got to do, you know, not just because of your blood work, but because you actually want to respond better.
I think there's a psychological, like, almost like dysfunction to not be able to do that. Like, I think the reason why the whole thing is called cycling is because you're supposed to cycle on and you're supposed to cycle off. That was the whole reason why they call it that. So why people can't get that through. And you know what? Back in the day, they would cycle, they would do 8-10 week cycles, then go off for 6-8 weeks, and then they would go back. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you to stay on the majority of the year. I'm hardly conservative about what I've said. When I used to say back in the day, when I would tell people to take 1,000 milligrams of test a week, they thought I was nuts. They thought I was Boston Lloyd back then. I said, listen, that's the effective dosage. And then everyone started doing it by convention because they saw the results I got. But I always went off. And there was 1 year I didn't go off, and I didn't like, my physique looked tired. It didn't respond when I did go back, and I kind of stayed on, continuously on HRT for, maybe about 8 weeks. And I just didn't like how I looked, and I noticed when I would go off, something else happened to my physique. It was like, it reset itself. And that's why I'm convinced the androgen receptors do really well when they have nothing present for a while. It's like they go through it's like you're rebooting your computer almost.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important. I think it's important for your brain too, to say, you know what, I can do anything. I'm not dependent on this. No one likes to go off, and no one likes, the idea of going off, because we think in our head, we want to make progress continuously. Like, we never want to stop. But like you just said, you're not going to make progress on that 8 weeks that even if you're on HRT. So you might as well just come off. It doesn't matter at that point. And it forces people to eat perfectly, to sleep more, to get better rest. And it reboots your brain in that sense too, because you're not going to try to set records in the gym while you're on nothing, right? So I think it gives people forced rest, because there's a lot of people that just, they want to train 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we know that's not the best way to grow. That's the worst way to grow, because it overtrains you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that part. Well, I came off for 4 weeks completely, and my test was 191, and God, that fucking sucked. But hopefully that's why I'm blowing up right now.
You know what? Who cares? So what? It's a few. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. Listen, I was the biggest bodybuilder one time, right? I was like, 319 back at 5 foot, barely 5'10", and no one was that big. And so for me, you would think, oh, it's going to be hard, but you know what? Mentally, I knew what the game plan was. So I knew after the shows were over, I was going to clean out for December or whatever, November to December. And then January, I was going to go back on. So I knew what the plan was, and I just dealt with it. I said, all right, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to train. I'm going to sleep more. I'm not going to push too hard in the gym, but I'm not going to not train like some of these guys do. And it was just part of the whole cyclical process. And once you integrate that into your process, it becomes easy, because that it's not like you're conservative. It's like, all right, this is my clean out. I'm giving my body the ability to have nothing in there and reset itself. And what happens also, and another important thing is, a lot of guys have trouble eating in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think going off, what I noticed when I was completely off, my appetite was insane. And I think it's because your body has less toxicity to deal with. When you're always on something, even though we know testosterone at an HRT dose is really not toxic, it's still, you're putting something into your body to process. It's like you want to give your body a break for that 8 weeks where it doesn't have to do anything except heal, replace itself, regenerate, rest, in the sense that you're not killing yourself in the gym. And it's like you're getting your body ready for the assault that's coming, in 2 months.
I like that word.
And because you can't, and look, I'm a big, I don't know if you ever read Wayne Dyer's books, or if you've ever explored any of the stuff that he does. He's not around. He passed a few years back, but he always said that every great spiritual leap is preceded by a fall. Like, you have to go down to come up again. And but that's with everything in life. You can't keep the curve going like this forever, right? You always have to kind of dip down to come back up again.
Yeah.
people who are very successful money-wise, and they always like they lose a lot or they have to risk a lot to get huge gains. And it's the same thing with bodybuilding. You can't go forever up. You have to sometimes take a couple steps back to then take a huge leap forward. And I wish more people would understand that. The people I work with, they all go off, so I don't deal with that. The only time I might say, all right, you know what, it's not a big, if you like, I got some older guys, they're in their 60s and stuff like that. They're not doing crazy cycles anyway if they're competing. Those guys, I let them do HRT. And a lot of times they tell me, you know what, Dave, no, I want to go off. I want to go off just like everyone else does, because it makes sense what you said. But some of those guys, would, for whatever reason, they want to stay on. I have no problem with that. But if you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s and you're at the prime of your career, you've got to take time off. I'm sorry. I'm not going to change my opinion on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. All the most successful people have taken a lot of time off, for sure. I also really like what you said about every spiritual leap is followed by a fall.
Preceded by a fall. Because
I always say that progression happens in cycles. Like all progression happens in cycles. No matter
that
what
word
kind.
again, cycle.
Yeah, yeah, we love cycling. But it's just it's nice to remind yourself that, because sometimes you get hit by a bus and
we all do.
Shit hits the fan. In your relationships, in your bodybuilding career,
sure,
in your I don't know, in your savings.
Yeah,
and
believe me, I know. I went through a brutal 2-year divorce and cost a lot of money, and if you allow it to, it can destroy you. But if you also go with the flow, it could take you to very, very high levels. David Paul, may he rest in peace, one of the Barbarian brothers, once said to me, he said, when I was younger, my brother and I, Peter, we used to run through walls. Like, in other words, in life, if there was a wall in the way, they just ran through the wall. He goes, as I got older, I realized that it's a lot easier to kind of flow around the wall and go through the doorway that's open. And once I started following the flow, which is not continuously forward, it's kind of like curved a little bit. He said, I became much more successful and things came to me more easily. And I never forgot that he told me that. I thought that was a really good analogy or metaphor for life.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good analogy. Do you mind me asking how you're doing?
Oh, I'm good now. But it was a tough 2 years. I don't look. Not anyone who's ever gone through a divorce knows it. And when you have a person who's very litigious and they enjoy the process, it's not going to go easy. And you have to. It sucks when you have to prove your innocence. But sometimes in life, you're put up to challenges. And listen. Wayne Dyer said this too, and I'm going to quote Wayne Dyer again. He said, when his father was an alcoholic, and he had a bunch of brothers. He had 4 brothers, something like that. And the father left the family, and the mother couldn't afford them, and she put him and his brother into an orphanage for 2 years. And she said, "I'll be back to get you." And what do you know? Imagine being a kid and being put into an orphanage when your mother's still alive and your father's a loser. And he said, I learned self-reliance when I was in that orphanage. And he said, she did come get me after that. And we did become a family again. And he said, but that's why I started writing books on self-reliance. And he goes, I never would have been able to write these books had I not been forced into that situation earlier in life.
Yeah.
For self-reliance, to learn self-reliance. And this is, that was his, this whole, mantra of what he did the rest of his life because of that experience. And ironically, his mother lived to I think she's still alive. She outlived him. She's like 100 years old. But the irony of the whole thing is that it's the same way. Sometimes I give advice to people, about how to, eat right, how to take supplements, performance enhancing drugs, bodybuilding, life lessons. And you can't give advice unless you've gone through a lot of shit in your life. Nothing bad goes on in your life. You don't have any challenges or tribulations to go through. How could you give advice to people? They're going to be like, the reason why people started listening to me from my bodybuilding advice is because I had the knowledge from going to school and I had an extensive educational background, but I actually was in the trenches doing this stuff. I put on the size. No one wanted to know what I did until I got to 300 pounds, then everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? We want to know, So, you got to experience stuff in life in order to be able to teach people life lessons. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's why I have a lot of interesting experiences over the last, 58 years of my life.
Sure. Sometimes you just gotta go through shit for the plot.
But you think about it. Think about how many people go through divorce and how many people have had trials and tribulations. And they're like, Dave, I didn't even know you were going through anything because you always showed up. You did your shows, you smiled, you made
Mm-hmm.
jokes. I said, my father taught me that the absurdity, you have to always see the absurdity of life. Everything's got to be seen through, you know, eyes that make you laugh, or or what's the option? Are you going to want to kill yourself? You know what I mean? You have to find the absurdity in life.
Yeah.
And because it is absurd. Life
It's
is absurd.
fucking absurd, bro.
It's a movie. We're in a movie. We're in a movie. And, if I wrote I believe we will write our movie before we're born. And I know that I would never write a boring story for myself because that's just the way I am. Other people like boring stories. I don't like boring stories. So
Yeah.
I'm sure I threw in, a lot of twists and turns along the way.
For sure, dude. It was funny. I was watching one of your videos and one of the top comments was like, dude, the divorce was the best thing that's ever happened to Dave. He's really on his fucking content shit right now. Fucking killing it with the content right now.
I don't know. Yeah, look, you obstacles are put in your way, and you find a way to go. Like I said, you don't go through them, you go around them. Like David Bull said, you got to just find a way to navigate them, and then find out what the reason was that you experienced this. Because there's always meaning behind everything that you experience in life. I know sometimes it's hard to extract that, but if you can find me, like I did 5 months in jail, in 2005. I mean, a lot of people would say that was pretty bad luck. And I say, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it enabled me to reevaluate my life and get to the next level. And when I got out, that's when I started doing all this, working for Steve Blackman at Muscle Development and doing the online stuff. So it prepared me for my next stage, and I think that it's important to see the positive, even in something that might appear negative. Another Wayne Dyer quote was, "Nothing in my life happens by accident." In other words, everything is there by intelligent design.
Yeah. I fuck with that heavy.
There are no mistakes, in other words.
Yeah. This might be tough to answer, and you don't have to talk about this if you don't feel comfortable, but what do you feel is the hardest thing that you've ever had to go through outside of bodybuilding?
Oh, that's an easy one because I never really dealt. It took me 20 years to deal with it. Probably my mother dying when I was 14 years old. She had pancreatic cancer, and my sister was 11, or I think she was 9. I was 14 or 13. And yeah, that was tough because we know it. If you have ever experienced pancreatic cancer and anyone you love, it's not a slow death. It's not a fast death. It's a slow death. She, basically just, deteriorated over 2 years, and it was a horrible experience to go through. And I really just didn't deal with it. I have this way of like compartmentalizing my emotions, and so that I can function, in life. And I'm really pretty empathic. Like I feel everything. So I block everything out so that I can function on a daily basis. The problem is I didn't deal with that, at all. And it took me 20 years later till I finally acknowledged it, and dealt with the emotional consequences of it. But I would say that was the hardest thing. I think now I'm much more emotionally honest. So when something terrible happens, I'll talk about it now. Whereas before I would just bottle it up and, put it away, which is a lot of men do that. A lot of men, try to be tough about it and not deal with it. But the worst thing is to not deal with it because it will come out eventually and rear its head,
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's a conversation that I really appreciate that I just had with Seth Feroci about how, obviously these aren't places that you sit in, but you have to feel it when it comes. It's meant for you to process. And once you process it, you've let it out, and then it's time to move on.
Yeah, he had a rough go. I remember I interviewed him about that too. Yeah, it was, and he look at how successful he is now. I told him, I said, man, I'm proud of you, man. You a lot of guys would have destroyed what you went through.
Yeah, same. What first got you into bodybuilding?
I was a runner. in high school and college, and I was obsessed with running. Like, you know what? I was always a good athlete in like when I was younger, elementary school, junior high school. I was a soccer player, basketball. Everything I did was just came very easy to me. I was just like a natural athlete, but I was lazy. I would practice, with the team, but wasn't one of these guys that went home and did extra stuff on the weekends and stuff like that. I did the bare minimum, as my father would say, to get by because it just came naturally to me. And I was I was always one of the best guys, in all the sports I played. So why would you put any more into it, right? I always tell my father, I used to say to him, why didn't you push me harder? He's like, nah, because I don't want you to hate my guts later in life, which I respect. No, because, I would have been a great athlete, but I would have said, yeah, he's an asshole, my father, but so my father wanted me to
like me and my
do it
parents.
on my own.
Yeah.
My father, I got to tell you, my father never pushed me. And I know as a parent, now that I'm a parent, it's very hard. And I think watching what he did with me gives me the ability to kind of take a step back with my children. I'll encourage them and I'll root for them, but I'll never push them because it's got to be their decision ultimately. So, but anyway, at some point, in high school, I realized, what, people were passing me now, like as boys became men and they got taller and, testosterone kicked in and I wasn't like the dominant guy anymore. And so I've been really gotten into running at that point. And I realized you can't half-ass it with running. You've got to run every day. Right. And so I rededicated myself. I said, you know what? I am done coasting. I'm going to give 100% to whatever I do. So I started with running because you got to run every day, and I really achieved a pretty high level for someone. I don't think, I didn't know anything about steroids back then. I was like a guy who could win races in a Division III college, scenario, which I thought was fun. And then, I worked out a little in high school, but then I got really skinny in college because, the coaches kept saying, lose more weight, lose more weight, lose more weight because you run faster. I was a long distance runner. And so I was going to graduate and I got into medical school early. And so my senior year there, I'm like, I'm too skinny. I'm never going to get a date. So I started working out again. I started reading like Muscle and Fitness magazine, Flex magazine. And I started, and I got kind of consumed with that whole process. And like, oh, and I gained I went from like 140 that I had starved myself down to up to like 180, like literally 40 pounds I gained. And it was all solid, in like almost like less than a year. That's how quickly my body responded. So I must have had, but I didn't look big at 180, but I looked good at 180, compared to what I was at 140, I look like an Ethiopian, 140. So, but I liked the idea of seeing that progress and the people, starting to compliment you. I liked that whole aspect of it, the validation it gave me. And that was during the years when Rocky and Rambo or the movies were coming out. I was consumed with the way Stallone looked. So I wanted to look like that. And then, what happens? I thought Arnold was too big. And then, then after you get to Stallone level, then you want to look like Arnold. And then I started researching, anabolics. I started reading Bill Phillips stuff. Now I hadn't taken anything, I probably read Bill Phillips' Anabolic Reference Guide 900 times. I knew the book. I could recite the book to you. I knew it better than he did probably. And I knew all the science behind it because I was a biology major and I was going into medical school. I had a really good understanding of physiology, biochemistry, all that stuff. And I just liked it. It was like, and I was always very good with like an endocrinology and even in high school. And I got hormones. I understood them, you know what I mean? And I said, man, I think that you can change your body. So, at some point, I did my first cycle and I found out very quickly that I was a hyper responder, to drugs. I didn't have the best structure, but I was super ripped all the time. And so everything I added muscle wise looked good. People were like instantaneously, saw the results. I didn't have to go through one of these off seasons where I was fat and then diet down. Everything I added looked good right from the beginning. And I think, what happens, you get validation from that. I did my first show, you get bit by the bug, and before you knew it, I was consumed with bodybuilding as much as I was with running, and I never looked back. I gained 100 pounds of muscle in 5 years, basically.
Sick. That's fucking so sick.
Crazy. It's crazy.
You're the first person I've ever heard in my entire life call themselves a hyper responder.
Yeah.
So I think that's honesty for
I
you.
didn't know until just recently that I was a hyper responder. I didn't even realize it. And I'll tell you how I figured it out, because when I was having my children over the course of like a 7-year period, of going off and taking HCG and HMG and developing my baby making protocol, which by the way, I give out for free to people. I'm probably responsible for 50% of the babies that are born in the bodybuilding industry these days because of that protocol. I was off for 7 years, nothing, and no HRT. My levels, maybe genetically I'm good, but my testosterone was like 550, natural, for 7 years. After doing 13 years of steroids and 10 years of HRT, my levels actually went back naturally to 550, which is a miracle.
Wow.
Right? So I had to have a surgery. So I was done having my kids and I had to have a surgery on my ankle. And I was worried that the bones weren't going to fuse properly. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to go back on HRT. I'm not having any more kids. So I went back on literally 100 milligrams a week of testosterone. And you would think I was taking 1,000 milligrams a week. I couldn't believe the strength increases and the gains I was making. It was crazy. And I was like, I couldn't believe, everyone was like, what the frick are you doing? I'm like, I'm on 100 milligrams. And then I went and got my blood work done on 100 milligrams of testosterone a week. My levels were like 1,800 total testosterone.
What?
And my HRT guy said to me, he goes, how much are you taking? I'm like, I'm on 100 milligrams. So I cut it back to 80. I take 80 milligrams a week now. I've been doing
Holy
that.
fuck.
And that gets me,
that's crazy.
And that keeps me about 1,000. Yeah, it's crazy. So I realized, you know what, dummy, you thought you were so smart with all the food you ate and the training. You're a hyper responder. You take drugs and your body hyper responds to it. And I think, obviously the training is very important and the eating is very important and the supplementation. But when you hyper respond to drugs, and you do everything else perfectly, you get great results. And I think that I've had conversations with other doctors and they think this one guy thinks that the Italian men respond very well to drugs. I don't know
Italian
why.
men.
Yeah, Italian men. So you have a lot of really good Italian bodybuilders,
That's funny. Paul would love to hear that.
Yeah.
Fucking, hey man, you're also one of the smartest guys that I know, those too. So I mean, it creates a pretty crazy force. Yeah, that's wild, honestly.
Yeah.
I do also believe that muscle maturity, or no, not muscle maturity, muscle memory is a thing.
Yes.
Like genuinely, like if kind of like the same way, like when you come off for like 12 weeks or so, and then you jump back on, you just blow back up to where you were before, and then you exceed that some more, So I just feel like it's just so easy to come back. Why?
You know what the original theory was behind muscle memory? You know who John Perillo is?
I do not. I know nothing.
Okay, John Perillo was a trainer of bodybuilders back in the day. And I think he just closed he had Perillo Performance, it was called. And he was a big advocate of MCT fat. He was the first person to really, propose fat for fuel and while you're dieting, low carb diets and stuff like that. He was one of those proponents, but he was very knowledgeable. He was also a really good trainer. He believed that muscle growth was limited by the fascia that surrounded the muscle. So if you had very tight fascia, it would be harder to grow because the muscle couldn't expand. And his belief was that, the reason why you have muscle memory is that when you stretch out that fascia and the muscle gets bigger and then you stop training and detrain and the muscle, height, shrinks. When you go back to training again, that fascia has already been pre-stretched. So you can just grow right back to the point you were at because you don't have to you don't have to spend all those months and months and months re-stretching it again, which, and with that theory was that if he would do these crazy stretches with guys like bodybuilding. He would go in there and stretch you like till you were like screaming, so that to kind of facilitate muscle growth. Now it sounded a little hokey to me, the whole thing from the beginning, but there was no other explanation initially. And then Scott Connolly,
I kind of remember that, to be honest. I remember that a little bit.
That was what they said back then. Scott was one of the theories, put it that way. Scott Connolly, who started the original Metrex, was my mentor. I worked with him for about 5 years at Metrex, and I learned so much. No one knows more about protein metabolism than Connolly. He was a genius, and he was so smart that no one knew what he was talking about, which is why we got along, because I could translate, what he was talking about to common, terms so the average people can understand. I used to have them on my radio shows back in the day a lot. But Connolly explained to me, and this is really this is what muscle memory is that when you build new muscle tissue, okay, and you break down muscle constantly, two things can happen. You can repair the existing muscle fibers, or if the cells feel like the muscles feel like there's not enough support there and that it needs to reinforce itself because you're subjecting it to such heavy loads, it can grab what we now call stem cells, but we used to call satellite cells. They were like these globs of undifferentiated cells that just surrounded the existing muscle. And what would happen is the body would turn them into mature muscle fibers. There would be small little nuclei, and they would add nuclei to the existing muscle fibers, and they would fuse. And then those new nuclei can then instruct the cells to increase the size of the cell. So in other words, the more nuclei you have, the bigger the cells you have. And this process goes on and on. As you break down more muscle, you turn more stem cells into mature muscle fibers, fused to the other muscle tissue that's in the muscle. And it goes on and on and on. And then if you take growth hormone speeds up that process, right? Because GH via IGF-1 will cause those stem cells to differentiate and cause more hypoplasia. At a much more accelerated rate. So you do this for 3 years straight, and now you might have 50% more nuclei in your body. Okay, the muscle nuclei. Now you stop training, the muscle atrophies. Okay, so you go back to the baseline, right? You look at, you don't even work out. But then you start training again. Now you have double the amount of nuclei present. So those nuclei now are, it's like having like a factory with an additional, 50% workforce. Of course, you're going to build back that muscle faster because you have more brain power to do it and more actual hands to build that muscle. So the muscle memory is the amount of nuclei you have that never disappear throughout your rest of your life. So if you double your nuclei numbers over the course of your 25-year bodybuilding career, you permanently have those cells there. Those nuclei are never going away. All they're waiting for is a stimulus to tell them to get bigger again. That's why you can put back muscle that much faster because of that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Honestly, we could list out a long list of all the peptides that have helped us. You guys have heard these peptides and these research chems in the podcast maybe a million times. Peptides I've used from APR such as BPC 157 and TB 500 for soft tissue healing, retatrutide and other GLPs, mitochondrial support such as SS31, MOTC, 5-amino-1Q, methylene blue, SLU. There's a bunch of others. Obviously, the list goes on and on. One of my favorite things, though, that I've been utilizing, such as during my last prep, that has allowed my blood work to come basically pristine, aside from slightly elevated liver enzymes at about 60 and 130 1 week after the show. And this is after a leg day because my dumbass doesn't want to skip a training day. These are probably the things that I think are the most important. So this includes like your injectable glutathione, injectable or even just normal NAC, liposoluble glutathione, GI aids such as oral BPC, oral TB, KPV. A lot of these things have probably been very substantial in reducing oxidative stress and keeping all my blood markers down, and thus keeping me as basically healthy as fucking possible that you can be while you're bodybuilding. So I couldn't be more thankful to Mike for literally showing me the ropes and also providing me with all of these things. Even the compounded supplements that he creates for blood pressure and reducing oxidative stress on all your organs, including your cardiovascular system, your liver and your kidneys. All of these that he creates have been very substantial, honestly. So you can find any of these at his site, aprhealthsolutions.com, and he has offered me a code Nile for you guys to use, which will offer you a 15% discount off of all of that as well. If you guys end up using those and you like him, please let me know. Shoot in a comment, just give me a DM or something, and if you ever have any problems or any questions, I'll be here too. This is a community for me, even though I don't have a fucking Discord because I'm lazy as shit, but I fucking should make one. So love you guys, and keep training hard. I remember you saying before that like when you first finally jumped on tests in GH, you realized that all you really needed to do back then was eat more, like as if you weren't eating enough.
Right.
How much do you feel like you needed to eat? And I guess I'm curious, how much do you feel like it was okay to see your body fat percentage increase?
Right. Well, you know what? Yeah, I was obsessed with not being fat, it's ironic. And that goes back to the running days, my running days where I was like, partially anorexic, I think that anorexic McDonald. So at some point I said to myself, I'm going to try to eat enough food to get fat, because it seems like my progress is only limited by how much food I can consume. So I'm still eating very clean at this point. I'm like, I'm going to try to eat as much food as possible. And if I get fat, then I'll know I hit the limit of what I should be eating and I'll cut back a little bit.
Right.
But in the history of my career, I never hit that point where I said I've eaten too much food and I'm too fat and I have to cut back.
Oh,
So
yeah? Huh.
my metabolism was just insane. And it was the only limit to my ability to build muscle was how much food I could eat. That was the hardest thing for me. Yeah.
Okay. So you're like, oh, well, I mean, hyper responder, but also
it sounds like I'm lying, but I'm not lying. I'm telling you, as much food as I put down, that's how much I grew.
Do you remember how many calories roughly it might be?
You know what?
It's tough to know, right? Back then,
I never calculated. I don't know why. I never wanted to know. Like I just knew, like, because I'm a neurotic and an OCD person, so I can't give myself too many little protocols because I'll get obsessed with the minutia of it. So I just knew what I had to eat, and I never sat down and figured the numbers out, like a bit, you know. Even the brief time where I was selling steroids, everyone's like, "How much did you make?" I'm like, I didn't want to know. Like, all I wanted to know is I could buy the stuff for myself and have the GH I needed. I don't want to know how much I was making money wise. It would have made me too nervous, you know, to know that. So I do know that at the peak of my eating, I was eating 12 times a day. I was waking up 2 times during the night and having 2 shakes.
Holy fuck.
So I was eating around the clock, basically, you know, never taking a break, which I don't know if that was good for my body or not, but it worked.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Like, do you feel like that hurt you, honestly? Because you had to wake up twice a night while you were
No, because I would sleep like 10 hours and I would take naps during the day because I didn't, my job was bodybuilding. But the point is that, I mean, I don't know if it hurt me in terms of like my body itself, kidneys, all that stuff. Who the heck knows, you know, how much damage we did back in the day to ourselves from all the overeating and you know, subjecting ourselves to, like, you know, torturously heavy weights, and you know, it had to have some toll on the body, you know.
Yeah, we're interestingly emotionally aggressive creatures for sure.
Yeah,
I still feel like I'm like learning. I've been learning the last few years how to pull back on training and actually focus on recovery rather than just like kill yourself in the gym all the time.
Well, you know what the funny thing? It's funny you mentioned that because I was a hyper responder, but I was very easily overtrained. So I'm obviously not a good. I don't recover well. So I had to stimulate. You know, the old Lee Haney, stimulate, not annihilate, and I had to teach myself that because as a runner, coming from running where you run every single day, you never take a day off. I had to teach myself controlled fury. You know, I got to train hard when I'm in the gym, not too long, and then I have to rest. And
not too long for
that was something. That was a lesson in learning how to balance your life, and that I had a lot of trouble with that initially, and it took me a while to do that.
I actually what I'm doing right now, so I was on 350 test, 300 primo, just jumped up to 500 test, 500 or 450 primo. I just want to take it a little bit slower this way or this time.
Right.
But I also wanted to titrate up my volume at the same time. And I used to do 8 sets of mid back, 8 sets of lats, 8 sets of quads, 8 sets of hammies. I would do 8 sets each workout, and then I would do the workouts about twice a week. So it'd be about 16 sets each, which is
that would be too much for me.
Yeah, it's a high amount of volume. So this time I lowered it down. I'm doing like 6 sets of each or whatever. Sometimes in the last couple of weeks or so, I got a little excited and stayed in the gym a little bit longer, and I jumped up to 7 sets each. And I've been feeling this insane fatigue in the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And I almost was like not choosing to believe that I just needed to deload. I just was like, maybe too much testosterone just makes you fucking exhausted. It makes you just unsettled. I don't know.
It's hard to train each body part twice a week. I don't know how guys do it. My body never was able to do that. But you know what? When I would train, I did for a little while that, you know, the twice a week thing. And I hated training each, but I hated, oh my God, I got to do legs again. It was like too soon. It was it was mentally exhausting too. Like, I put so much effort into my leg workout that I don't want to train it more than once a week.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a very telling sign. That's like my body saying, dummy, you don't need to train it more than once a week. It was like, because I'm very intuitive with my body. And so sometimes I don't listen because I think that I could push myself beyond what my brain is telling me to do. And so, yeah, I just don't see guys making the greatest. You know, the problem is everyone looked at Ronnie Coleman and said, oh, he trained each body part twice a week. He only took Sundays off for church. Yeah, but Ronnie's a genetic freak. So he's really not the guy you want to emulate. You know, you want to
Mhm.
find the guy who doesn't grow very well and listen to what that person does, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Less is better, really. It's like I said, it's controlled fury. Rather than do 6 sets in the gym, do 12 sets per body part, but do it once a week, you know?
Mm.
And I think you'll get better results. I really do.
Okay. I love this discussion because obviously we have no science on enhanced people,
Yeah.
but you know, you hear old school bodybuilders and what they believe you should be taking in terms of protein intake, and then you hear guys like Sebum who says you only need how much everybody, what the science says about natural people, right? Like 0.82 times your weight whenever you're in a surplus, 1.2 times your weight whenever you're like in a deficit or something. How much protein do you think is actually the most optimal for someone in the pro bodybuilding space?
Yeah, I think C-Bum's the worst person to listen to because he's a genetic freak. Listen, guys, if you were watching this, don't listen to the genetic freaks. They're the worst person to take advice from. And it's not because they don't know. It's
Aren't you included in that?
No, I'm not. I'm a hard gainer. So you should.
You're a hard gainer, but also a hyper responder.
I'm a hyper responder to drugs. There's a difference.
Okay.
But I don't grow easily because if I overtrain, in other words, I had to really perfect my training and supplementation.
I know what you're saying,
stuff like that. So, but yeah, but this guy, look, Vince Taylor, this is confirmed by multiple people, used to do 30-pound dumbbell curls. He had one of the best arms I've ever seen. Paul Dillette used to do 20-pound dumbbell curls, and he had 25-inch arms. Yeah,
Paul Dillette had like the biggest arms in the world, dude.
To those guys, that's why when they say they pump the muscle, they grow from that. I don't know how they do it. No other human being on the planet can do that. But that's why at the end of the day, bodybuilding is a contest of genetics. And as much muscle as I had and as lean as I was, because I might have been as lean as anyone up there, I structurally did not have a Mr. Olympia physique. So that's it. Game over for me. You know, yes, I achieved the level of success and people, and I found a niche for myself, but there was no way I was winning Mr. Olympia because I didn't have the structure to do it. And that's why I feel bad for guys like Nick Walker, who has a much better structure than I ever had. But structurally, there are guys that are better than him. And if they're better on stage, they're going to beat him. And it's not his fault. He's not doing anything wrong. He's training as hard, if not harder than everyone else. He's putting in the work. But bodybuilding at the end of the day is genetics. And the genetically gifted are the guys that are Mr. Olympia. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's true.
I do feel you could still say the same or similar, not quite the same, but pretty similar about a lot of sports, especially like basketball. Even though there are those guys that were like, what is it? There's like, I'm trying to remember who the shortest guy is, like 5'7" or something in the basketball in the pro league.
Muggsy Bogue, right? Was really short.
But I don't know. How much protein do you think is most optimal then for pro bodybuilders?
I got away from the question. So so at the end of the day, I believe about 1.5 grams per pound that you weigh is the right amount of protein.
Okay.
I don't think you need too much more than that. And I'll tell you why people sometimes find that they need more than that, because you also have an essential fat requirement. So fat and protein builds and repairs muscle. Carbs are just a fuel source. We know that, right? So guys who eat very low fat diets and eat very lean sources of protein tend to need more protein because they're getting, and I told this on the Jay Cutler podcast, guys are getting their fat indirectly from the protein sources, right? So if you make a concerted effort to eat enough fat in your diet, which I believe is about, for men, about 0.5 to 0.75 grams per pound that you weigh. So if you're a 200-pound man, you need at least 100 grams of fat. I would say closer to like 135, 140. But if you eat enough fat, you can eat less protein. Okay, you could eat 1.5 grams, or even 1 gram probably per pound. If you don't, you're going to need more protein because you're going to need to get that fat from the protein source, which makes it harder for your body because your body has to process a lot of extra protein above and beyond what it really needs. And I discovered this because I was up to 600 grams of protein at one point.
Jesus,
and I didn't
dude.
really feel that great. It was like almost like my body was a little toxic on it.
Yeah.
And then I started adding fats in when I discovered fats, and I realized, and my protein got cut way back. I went back to about 450, and that was ideal. And I felt really good at 450 protein when I was about 300 pounds. And
Holy fuck.
I was eating about 200 grams of fat a day, 250 probably. I was eating a lot of fat. And then the rest is carbs based on what my metabolic demand was at the time. And I don't remember. I never really calculated. I kind of, some days I had higher, some days I had lower. And I just kind of dictated it that way.
How tall are you again?
At my best, I was about 5'10" and a half.
At my best.
Right now, I'm about 5'9". I think I lost an inch. I'm about 5'9".
Fire.
You lose hair and you lose height as you get older, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
hopefully I keep my intellect. I'm trying to increase my intellect while I'm losing hair and I'm losing height. Yeah.
At my best, I was 6 foot. I think it was in my dreams, but
that's a good,
damn. Wow. It sounds like to me that 1.5 grams seems to align with all of the top bodybuilding coaches. I feel like they all believe the same too. They all kind of hit that mark too whenever they make their plans. Like Patrick has me on about 1.5, or he had me on about 1.5. Do you feel like that number ever changes or should change based off of if you're in a surplus or a deficit, or if you're in your off season or you're in prep?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because what changes is fat intake and carb intake. So, ideally, I would love to diet guys on the same amount of protein and fat that they eat in the off season. But a lot of times, as you start losing weight, you don't need as much protein, you don't need as much fat. So you have to kind of modify that. So if you're 300 pounds versus 240, you're not going to need as much protein and as much fat. You just don't need it because you're not feeding as many cells in your body, right? Even fat cells need to be fed and oxygenated, and so as you lose weight, you're going to cut that back. But I think it's about 1.5 grams per pound, and like I said, about 0.5 at least grams of fat, per pound that you weigh. If you can get that down, then the carbs become the swing nutrient. And I've always done that. And so some days I'll do higher carbs with guys. Some days I'll do no carbs with guys. I mix it up. But I think that the good thing about fats is you can kind of store them. So you can go some days on lower fats and not have any negative ramifications because your body does store the fats and can use them at a later date. Whereas protein can't be stored. We know that there's no storage facility for protein in the body. So if you don't eat enough protein every single day, your body cannibalizes its own muscle tissue for those amino acids that it needs. Yeah. And so that's why protein is the most important nutrient when we talk about bodybuilding, because even if you go 5 hours during the day because you missed a meal and you try to make it up later, you can't because there's no storage. So during that 5-hour or 6-hour fast that you had, essentially, your body was starving for amino acids. It pulled it from your skeletal muscle. That's why I would be so panicked if I missed a meal or mealtime was coming and I couldn't find a place to eat, or I didn't have a meal with me in my car back in the day, because I was like, I'm losing muscle. I was so paranoid about losing muscle that if I would, how you're driving sometimes and you get a near miss, someone's like, just cut you off and you get that adrenaline release, like, whoa, that was pretty close. I would be all paranoid that I was releasing cortisol and that I was losing muscle because of that. That's how nuts I was about losing muscle back then.
I've thought about that.
You're really a psychopath when you start thinking like that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. You just have me thinking about new things.
Yeah.
I do really love carb cycling, though. I can say that. I feel like it's always been effective.
I think it works. Yeah, I think it works. Yeah. You know what? This is what I do with my guys. I do some days with carbs and, high protein, obviously, in vegetables. And then other days I do just protein and fat, like my ketogenic diet, but it really isn't the ketogenic diet because they're not doing it every day. You can only be in ketosis if you're doing it every day. But I do that so that the days that they're eating like no carbs, they're eating high fats. And then the days that they're doing carbs, they're eating lower fats. They're still having some fats, but they're doing lower fats. And rather than just like every day have a different amount of carbs, some days I give them no carbs, and then most days they have some carbs. And so That's how I start them out. And then I'll switch those rotations around, debating on how, depending on how they were responding. If they're not losing, I might give them more fat days and less carb days. If they're responding well, then I keep them on the carbs. So, there's no reason to take them away just for the sake of taking them away.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. This is totally bro science in my head, but because I've never looked it up, but I really feel like carb cycling just improves your storage over that long period of time.
Well, it's a very, think about it. If you think about glycogen stores in the muscle and in the liver, which is where the carbs are stored, right? If you think of that as like a gas tank in your car, I always tell people that it's a gas tank in your car. The tank needs to have gas in it. Okay. It needs to have some carbs in it, right? Some glycogen in there, but it doesn't need to be full, right? Your car runs just as well if the tank is half empty as if it's all the way filled up. And sometimes it works better because it's lighter, the car, right? So I think people have this idea that they need to have those glycogen stores topped off at all times. Well, guess what? If they're topped off, your body's never going to dig into stored body fat. So it only makes sense to deplete the glycogen stores down, get that gas tank down near empty, because you're going to burn the most fat. And then if kind of like progress stalls, you fill the tank up a little bit more. You just don't want to overfill the tank, because when you overfill the tank, if you did that at a gas station, the gas would spill onto the floor. In the body, it just stores that stuff as fat. So we don't want that to happen either.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I am kind of surprised though at your markers for fat intake. I feel like most bodybuilders are not hitting that 0.5 to 0.75 times their weight. Like even me, for example, like I feel like with Patrick, my fat was always around like anywhere from 60 to 70 maybe. And I'm weighing like 195, around 200. Yeah. So that's not even that 0.5.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you'll see a big difference if you raise it up, especially of the essential fatty acids. I think a lot of people are eating enough saturated fat because they'll eat red meat and stuff like that. They'll eat whole eggs. I think that's kind of acceptable now in bodybuilding circles, but they're not focusing on the monounsaturated fats like extra virgin olive oil, or I make a product from Species Nutrition Macadamia nut oil, which is it's the greatest oil of all time. I'm telling you, it's the number. Every bodybuilder should be consuming tons of macadamia nut oil in the off season and using measured amounts in their contest prep. Because it burns really efficiently. It's great for your heart. It improves your cholesterol levels, and the body just likes to use it. And it's a very stable oil. The polyunsaturates, which are also known as the essential fatty acids, are necessary. They're fatty acids that the body can't synthesize on their own. So you need to take those in, but you don't need high amounts of them. So you're better off focusing on taking them in supplemental form. So like I make a product called Omega-Lyze, for instance. You take 3 pills twice a day. It's 3 grams of fish oil and 2,600 milligrams, or almost 3 grams of evening primrose oil. So it gives you your 3s and 6s, because omega-3s and 6s need to be balanced in the right ratio, and they need to come from the right sources. That's an insurance policy everyone should just do. That's only, we're talking about 6 grams of fat total, but they're necessary for the body to engage in certain processes, making certain hormones, prostaglandins, and muscle repair. You're an idiot if you don't take a supplemental form of that as an insurance policy, because they are, quote, essential. They're not something that you can get from food very easily, unless you're eating a lot of wild caught, salmon. And a lot of guys are not doing that. They're eating the farm salmon because the wild caught's too expensive. So
that I totally agree with. Stupid calls. God damn it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's one thing that I've kept in check for the last few years or so. Has been majority of my fats actually has been coming from olive oil, macadamia nut oil, wild caught salmon, and I have a lot of fish oils. Honestly,
I love avocados too.
Yeah, avocado, for sure. Also, like it's not like I'm sponsored or anything, but for some reason I'm obsessed with this Carlson's fish oil that you just come in the bottle, so you can leave it in the fridge. So it also helps help you make sure it's not like being oxidized in those capsules and shit.
Right. If you're getting a good quality fish oil, they don't oxidize very easily in those capsules. But you know what the problem is? That if you don't balance the fish oil, which is omega-3 fat predominantly, with the evening primrose oil, which is a very hard to find omega-6 fat known as GLA, you're going to throw the balance off. It's the ratio that's important. So a lot of people pound the fish oil, but they're not taking the corresponding amount of GLA in omega-6 form that they need. The only omega-6s that they're getting are from saturated fats, which are arachidonic acid, which is great. You need arachidonic acid, but it needs to be balanced by GLA too. And once again, it's too hard to find that in your food. Just take a supplemental form of it. I make it so easy for people with omega lies. You don't have to think. You take 3 pills twice a day and you're done. You got your essential fats done for the day.
If you don't balance it, what happens? What are like symptoms?
It throws the ratio off. It's you don't respond. Remember, the omega 3s and 6s are what's responsible for the production of prostaglandins, which either produce inflammation or anti-inflammation. So you don't want to have excessive inflammation in the body, and you don't want to have excessive anti-inflammation in the body, because too much anti-inflammation, even though it sounds in theory like it would be healthy for you, is not good for bodybuilding, because a certain amount of inflammation is a signal for the body to repair itself. That's why if you take like ibuprofen and these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, they'll inhibit muscle growth. Yeah. So if you don't balance the right amount of 6s and 3s, you throw off that inflammation, anti-inflammation balance in your body.
But is that not more of like a timing thing? Like, for example, taking your omega 3s outside of your workout window and then taking arachidonic acid like during your workout windows?
No, well, you don't have to take an arachidonic acid supplement because you get plenty in the food, in the chicken and breast and the red meat you eat. That's not the problem. It's the GLA that you can't get, the gamma linolenic acid. That's the hard one to get. It's hardly in any foods. So you need to take that in supplemental form. And, I see a lot of guys pounding the fish oil, which they think, which is very healthy for you, but it's really, really anti-inflammatory. And you could take too much and cause there was an article years ago that said that fish oil inhibited muscle growth. Now, it doesn't really do that, but you can blunt that inflammatory response so much so from the fish oil that it could theoretically, blunt your muscle building response. Okay. So keep the balance. And like I said, I did the research for you. I did put the formula together. You don't have to think about it. Just take it. Just take the 3 pills twice a day. Don't complicate it. It's not more complicated than that. It's that easy,
Take a supplement, guys.
Not that I'm forcing you to. You could. No one else combines those 2 ingredients in the same formula except me. And the reason I did it is because I hated taking 2 different bottles. I had the one fish oil bottle. I had the evening primrose bottle. I said, I'm just going to put it in one bottle. And when I went to the manufacturer, because there's only a few people that manufacture fish oil, good quality fish oil, that is. And I said to them, this is the formula I want. They're like, no one makes this formula. I said, exactly why I'm making it. Like, but we don't have it proprietary in that. I said, well, then you're going to make it for me. They're like, all right, fine, we'll make it. So that's I convinced them to make it. I love how people resist change. These companies, like, no one does this. I said, yeah, well, that's why I'm doing it. I said. It's like when I went to the whey isolate people, I buy whey isolate from Glanbia, which is the biggest company. And I say to them, I want the highest grade isolate. They're like, no one buys that. It's too expensive. I said, that's why I want it. I said, because no one buys it. I said,
Okay.
I said, don't ask questions. Just give me what I want. I said,
if you were to, honestly, I do really want to ask this because I'm curious, because I know that obviously you've learned a lot of things over the course of the last couple decades since you've competed. If you were to go back in time and you could do it all over again, and you wanted to blow up as fast as possible, gain the size that you wanted in the places that you wanted to, including PEDs, what would you do?
Well, sometimes usually I thought you were going to ask me the question, what would you change if you had to do it again this time? What do you think that you messed up on? And I would say number 1, gut health. The fiber supplements.
The reason I didn't ask what you would change is because I've heard you say gut health before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. But I'm still curious though, because some people haven't heard.
Yeah. So I would definitely fiber would be something that I left out of the first half of my bodybuilding career, which I think would have helped a lot of the abdominal distension I got and a lot of the, I was eating so much food. I mean, if I would have just studied gut health and applied some probiotics and the fiber lysolite product back then, that would have definitely changed things. I think drug wise, I think I did it right. I think I really figured it out the right way, except instead of using like a fast acting insulin, I was using like a Humulin R back then, I would use a long acting insulin. I think that was something that we didn't know about. I think I would have been on a high dose of long-acting insulin because of the GH I was on and because of the amount of food I was eating. I think it would have helped with absorption. I wouldn't have had to worry about timing, meals and stuff like that, because long-acting insulin kind of works in the in the backdrop.
Yeah.
I
But that's
definitely
the
would have
primary
used
reason
that.
you would do long instead of short, is just because you wouldn't have to deal with the timing and because you're already eating so
Yeah,
many
because
meals throughout the
no, but
entire.
I think, well, I think that with bodybuilders, the reason yes, GH makes you insulin resistant, but I
Mhm.
think because we eat so much food, plus the insulin resistance, I think there's just not enough insulin. I don't think our bodies are capable of producing enough insulin to satisfy the amount of food that we eat as bodybuilders. So we run slightly high blood sugars, which means we're not efficiently absorbing all those amino acids and glucose that we're eating. And so
Uh-huh.
I think a lot of times, especially like guys with fast metabolism, I think we're not absorbing the food. Like we're eating it, but it's not really getting absorbed properly. And I don't know where the sugar is going, but it's not going to the right places. Because as soon as you put like a long acting insulin in, I see people growing better and looking better and feeling better.
Hmm.
So I think that was something that people didn't think about. Hey, he's eating 12 times a day, 50 grams of protein, 100, 25 grams of fat, 80 grams of carbs every meal, 12 times a day. Maybe his beta cells can't keep up with that.
Mhm.
That might be the limiting factor. So I
Interesting. Okay.
didn't know what I was doing. So I was experimenting. I was taking Humulin R, which was giving me 2 peaks throughout the day. And I was doing that twice. I was getting four extra little jolts of insulin, which definitely helps because I grew when I took it.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't really understand what I was doing. So because I didn't have an understanding of blood sugar control. No one had monitors back then. They were too expensive.
I mean,
So
say that you're not, say that you're still in a surplus, but you're not in like the crazy surplus that you were, because I think most people aren't as hard of a gainer as you were.
yeah,
Do you still think that, like, even compared to not using insulin, for example, just like on the days that you are hitting your weakest muscle groups, because that's what a lot of coaches are having their clients do right now,
yeah.
is still effective enough to giving your pancreas a break?
Yeah, I'm not really. I think people take insulin because they think it's anabolic and they're going to grow, like they're taking IGF-1. I
Hmm.
don't think they understand what insulin really does. It just drives nutrients into the cells. It's not really. It's not going to create like an anabolic, effect. I think that you should take. Listen, I've put a lot of information out there and explained it, and people still don't listen to me. They still think that they have to take this fast acting insulin, and there's nothing wrong with taking fast acting with every meal. Matter of fact, I always tell people you're better off taking insulin than not taking it because it does
Hmm.
take the burden off your body. Okay, but I
Uh-huh.
will tell you this: that almost every bodybuilder over 40 that I work with has high fasting blood sugars. Almost every single one of them in the off season. I don't give people long acting usually when they're dieting for a show, but almost all of them have high fasting blood sugars because they've been competing their whole life, eating 6 times a day for 20 years. And quite frankly, they burnt out their pancreas a little bit, myself included. I have a prescription for a long acting insulin I take every night. And ever since I did that, my hemoglobin A1C, which is your average blood sugar over 3 months, is 5.2, which is ideal. And before that, it was on the border. It was like 5.6. It was borderline high. And I was like, I don't want to get dementia later in life. I don't want to have all the side effects of high blood sugar because what happens is even if your blood sugar is just a little high over the course of 20 years of being just a little high, you get side effects from it. Vision, kidneys, extremities. Because what you're doing is you're gunking up the capillary beds of these extremities, of all your extremity organs. And they start to die off, and that includes the brain. If the brain gets starved of oxygen because the little capillary beds are all gunked up with sugar that shouldn't be there in high amounts, you get dementia long term. So
Yeah.
that's my one fear as
Hmm.
I get older. Everyone's like, "Oh, what are you worried about as you get older?" I say, "I fear losing my mind." So I have to do everything to keep the
Yeah.
blood flow going to my brain because
Hmm.
that's my calling card. It's the only thing that I can preserve.
Right.
Body
Yeah.
falls apart, but the brain you want to preserve.
Do you supplement with a lot of cholinergic supplements?
Some, yeah, I do some. I do like this Cognitex product from Life Extension. I try to do a little. I do NAD plus injections for the
Hmm.
mitochondria.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think the most important variable is controlling blood sugars. I really believe that 100%. I think a lot of cognitive decline happens over a long period of time that people are running slightly high blood sugars. And
Mm.
some people, in some cases, high blood sugars. Listen, I've told people, I've looked at their blood work and I've said, listen, you need to be on insulin or you need to be on something that lowers your blood sugar. I said, and these doctors won't push. They're like, oh, you're fine. It's not that high. Meanwhile, they're running 120 fasting blood sugars. That's terrible. That's terrible. They want to wait, these doctors, till you're like a full blown, diabetic that requires insulin all the time. You can stop that. If you take a long acting insulin, you'll never progress to that point where your pancreas doesn't work. So I don't know what the reticence is about prescribing insulin, but a lot of these doctors won't do it. They just won't do it. They don't care.
I may be assuming things incorrectly just because I'm not very knowledgeable over the subject. But if you do this, say you use a long-acting insulin in your off season, how do you prevent yourself from getting fat from consuming 0.5 to 0.75 times your weight in fats?
Because insulin doesn't store fat as fat; it stores carbs as fat.
It's not the storage hormone for like everything.
No, just for glucose. So if you don't overeat carbs, you don't get fat.
I mean, doesn't it?
It's that simple. That's not to say that fat can't be stored as fat, but it's not being facilitated by insulin. So if you have extra insulin in your body, or you're taking enough insulin, the insulin has no effect on the storage of free fatty acids. And I think that's the mistake people make in their mind. They think insulin stores everything as fat. No, it only stores glucose as fat. And that's only assuming the glycogen stores are filled up. If you have low glycogen stores, insulin's not going to store the glucose as fat. It's going to store it as the glycogen. So I always tell people, just don't overeat carbs. It's that simple. Don't overfill the gas tank, like I told you, and you're not going to get fat. It's a pretty simple equation. It's not it's not a brain surgery, but people think in the off season they have to eat massive amounts of carbs to grow, but carbs are not utilized in the muscle building process. They're just fuel. So what you should be focusing on is getting enough protein and enough essential fat, and just eat enough carbs to fuel the process. And that's, but historically, people think off season, gorge on carbs, they do make you feel full and pumped, right? So that must be building muscle, but it's really not, and I think that once people get away from that these myths, there's a lot of myths out there, like, never mix insulin with fat in a meal because you'll get fat from that. And I know Milo says that a lot, but that's not true, unfortunately.
I feel like there's a lot of people that say that.
Post-workout, I would eat fat because you want to get the goal post-workout meal, off-season at least, is to get the protein and carbs into that muscle. The protein so that it can start building, and repairing, and the carbs to reglycogenate the muscle and the liver. So that's the only meal you should not eat fats post-workout, But every other meal, you should make sure you're getting enough fat, because that's one of the components of building and repairing muscle. All the cell membranes that surround the muscle cells are made of essential fatty acids. They're made of some saturated fats. So you need fat to repair muscle. It's not just protein. Like I said, the good thing is that you can store fat. The problem with protein is you can't store it. So that's why you have to eat it every 2-3 hours.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't insulin also uptake fatty acids in your bloodstream?
No, it's just glucose. Think about it. There's an insulin receptor on the cells on the receptor. Excuse me. There's an insulin receptor on the membrane, the outer membrane, cell membrane of every cell in your body. And insulin receptors, when insulin binds to that, it drives glucose, and sometimes amino acids will piggyback with the glucose into the cells. But its job is to lower blood sugar. That's the only job of insulin.
Okay.
But it creates an anabolic effect to the body because it gets the nutrients inside the cells. Now, if the cells are filled up and there's no place to put the glucose, then it'll put the glucose into the fat cells. And then the fat cells will turn that, into, free fat, to stored body fat.
So what would be the reasoning then that if someone eats a bunch of sugar with fats, it kind of exacerbates how fat that they can get?
Well, because it's just too much energy. It's like, I don't believe in the calorie hypothesis of weight loss, but if you eat too many calories, you do get fat, right? Because it's just, you're putting too much energy into the system. The system doesn't need to use it for anything, so it stores it, right? I mean,
I always thought that was because you created a greater insulin spike. So
no,
then you'd be storing more.
Just look, You're putting too much glucose in there and you're putting too much fat. So your body doesn't, what is it going to do? I don't need all this fat. I don't need all this glucose. We're going to store it as fat. That's all, we'll save it for later, you know? It's like
Okay.
the, you know, if I help a lot of girls, and these women, you know, I notice they're gaining weight sometimes when they send me an update. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Are you cheating on the diet? Nope. And I'm like, I sit down with them, I make them do food diaries, and I know the questions to ask now because I know what people do. I said, all right, you're eating exactly what I'm telling you to eat in terms of foods. I said, are you possibly eating extra? Like maybe you're not weighing your chicken, maybe you're eating extra, you know, fish. Well, yeah, sometimes maybe I eat a little extra. I said, do me a favor, start weighing what you're eating. And then it turns out instead of eating, you know, 4.5 ounces, they're eating like 7 ounces of fish. Okay. So now you would think, well, they're still, according to them, they're still following the diet, right? They're not eating like, you know, M&Ms or anything like that. But that extra energy in the system, the body doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't need it. The 120-pound girl doesn't need 7 ounces of protein 6 times a day. So her body will take the protein, which is not a very efficient process, and it'll turn it into carbs and then store that as fat. So, you know, or use it for energy at least. And then they don't lose body fat because there's no reason to dig into stored body fat because they're using that extra protein they're eating as energy. So you can't put unlimited amounts of even just good food into the system. It'll get stored somehow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Insulin only facilitates the storage of glucose as fat.
Okay. I'm interested if people will have any comments on this and there'll be any discussion over this, because
you know what
I feel like I need to do more research.
Niall, you know what I tell people all the time? When the people start making videos to like criticize me, I always put it out there. I'm like, you know what? If I'm wrong, get some topics together. Let's do a podcast and we'll have a debate on it and we'll talk about the science of it. In the history of me doing this, no one has ever taken me up on my offer to debate them, ever.
This would be
Ever.
awesome, though.
No, because I don't mind discussing things that I know the science of, because I know that I'm right. So show me that I'm wrong. Let's do it. Let's have an intellectual conversation about the science, and you can tell me about your version of the scientific world as to why it's correct and why I'm wrong. You should want to get me on a show and debate me and expose me, right? If you think I'm wrong, they have no problem going on Instagram and doing a reel and saying I'm a moron and I don't know what I'm talking about. But no one has ever accepted a debate one-on-one to debate the science. And the reason is because I don't I don't put science out there that I know is not correct, because if I did that, then I would be, you know, setting myself up for first of all, I wouldn't do it because I want to be an information provider that provides accurate information, but I'm not going to do it where I have to go there and then be made a fool of, right? So, and listen, I've been wrong before in the past about things that I've said, not very often, and I'll be the first person to say, yep, fucked up. Yeah, didn't read the thing, or I didn't look at, you know, I'm the first person. I'm certainly not perfect, you know,
Mhm.
but when I talk about science, I pretty much know what I'm talking about usually.
Okay, cool. Because of all the drama of the last company that I was working with, and I'm not trying to point any fingers or anything, but you guys definitely have probably heard what was going on. I've been a little bit skeptical, to be honest, and I've been wanting to find an HRT company that I could work with and that I could get my blood work done with, and that would offer me some proper guidance without upcharging all of my homies and shit. So there's this kind of crazy opportunity that I feel like the universe has granted, because it's not something that I searched for necessarily, but ended up being through connections with my closest friends. And it's this new company I was working with, Optimize HRT, which Nathan was recently discussing. And I just gotta say, man, I'm really proud of everything that they've created and everything that they're standing for. They're trying to take advantage of the fact that they know what went wrong with the last HRT company and trying to make sure that that doesn't happen this time, if you know what I'm saying, and doing things the right way. So this company is where I am getting my blood work done from, and basically getting all my health measures and protocols for longevity checked. And basically the difference between an HRT clinic and a research chem gray market source is that the HRT clinic works with a 5083 compounding pharmacy. You can get all your peptides and your medications prescribed by the doctor. If you're not getting a hormonal peptide or medication such as testosterone, nandrolone, winstrol, or anavar, which you can get prescribed to yourself if the need is shown, such as like osteoporosis or some other muscle wasting disease. Then luckily you can get the peptides prescribed to you without having to get blood work done. But they do offer a $100 membership that includes free blood work, which is normally a $420 panel every 3 months. And with the membership, you also get a wellness specialist that is like your peptide coach that will, with the doctor, give you the best peptide protocol or medication protocol to make sure you reach your goals. And these are goals such as fertility goals, cutting down and getting fucking jacked, composition goals, longevity goals, basically everything that you can imagine that is fucking sick for dudes. The other great thing, aside from getting everything prescribed, which obviously you can show your destinations if you're traveling, your prescriptions, so you're not getting thrown into jail in Tokyo or some shit. It is sent with cooling, needles, and instructions, which is actually illegal for research chem science. And in terms of safety and quality, Optimized HFT does work with a 503A compounding pharmacy, in which the FDA checks for its inflow and outflow currents to make sure that there are no vortexes that cause contamination, which yields the highest threshold of safety, basically. So this is on an opinion by opinion basis. Like, if you decide that you want to go the cheaper route, then normally gray market sources that are research chem sites will normally offer these for cheaper. Since the company is still new, they are offering their peptides at the lowest cost that they can in respective to other HFT companies, because they are trying to get their member base up. So if you are wanting to join an HFT clinic, now is probably the time. And that link is going to be in the description if you guys are interested. You could also use code NILE whenever you apply, because that helps your boy out and gives me a little reference and gives me some creds. So they know I'm sick and that people actually like the podcast, which would be pretty awesome. Since I am helping with the start of this company, I want to make sure that this is the best company that could possibly give us the best experience. So if you guys happen to have any questions or any concerns, bring this shit up with me, man, because I want to make sure that we all grow this to be the best that we can, and we all grow together, obviously, because otherwise my podcast is shit and everything that I've like worked for is like fucking pointless. So that's what it's all about, bro. Is family and brotherhood and us getting fucking yoked. So regarding the whole if you would go back in time thing, so if you could change things up, what would you do regarding your PED stack and dosages?
You know what the truth is? I wouldn't change a thing. I think I believe that 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week is exactly what the body needs to ideally grow. At least my body needed that. Like, that was the optimal dosage for growth. If I took more than that, I kind of got like a flu-like feeling, almost like that's, we call it steroid flu now, I think, but I would get like, it was like my body was hyper, like said, this is too much, basically. And so I think 1,000 a week, a gram a week of test is perfect. And I would combine that with like 400 to 600 milligrams of like an anabolic. In the off season, I would do 2 drugs, and I would combine that, usually like EQ or DECA or, Tren, enanthate. And I believe like 3 to 5 IUs of GH per day is ideal. When I competed, we used like 3 because it was very expensive. It's a little more affordable these days. Mm-hmm. And, I would probably, in the off season, use some sort of a long acting insulin with that. And I think that's the ideal stack. Now, we can put other stuff on top of that. Like we can add some IGF-1 at a low dosage, cycling on and off it. We can put some of these healing peptides that I didn't have back in the day, which I love. The BPC 157 is my favorite, and some of that stuff. But other than that, there's not really that much new stuff on the market that I would be, like, holy shit, this is what I got to use. I wish we had it when I was competing. Anabolic steroids are still, 1,000 times stronger than anything else on the market in terms of building and repairing muscle. There's just nothing that's replaced it. We've heard, rumors and whispers about myostatin inhibitors. Nothing has been produced that has, resulted in any significant improvements in muscle, gains during that time period. Probably the most, monumental thing that's come out over the last couple of years would be, the GLP-1 agonists seem to be really good for people who like to, cheat on their diet and have like appetite issues. I think that's a game changer for a lot of bodybuilders who just don't have the willpower to, to not cheat. And so I think that we're seeing a lot of people using those. But, the best fat burners is still clenbuterol and T3. And they were that way when I was competing, and that hasn't changed. So I don't, really see a lot of difference in what I would do in terms of drugs. I think the knowledge of food and fiber, gut health, and stuff like that,
Gut
that
health for
really
sure.
is, and the supplements are so much better quality nowadays than what they were. The protein powders and stuff like that, that's where I think that the guys today have an added advantage.
You're not a fan of the 5-star from Walmart?
The which one?
The 5-star, good old 5-star protein.
No, definitely not. That stuff's just, it kills me when I go to like Price Club, these, like Sam's Club and like BJ's, and I see these like huge sacks of protein they're selling, and I look at the ingredients, and it's nothing more than glorified powdered skim milk with like with like sugar in it, and I know that every person that buys that thing thinking they're getting a great deal are going home and they're using it and they're shitting their brains out from the stuff because the lactose content is so high in there.
Yeah.
And, it's worse. It's actually worse than milk because they concentrate it. So you're in milk, you're only getting so many grams of lactose. In a protein powder, you think about it, you're tripling the amount of protein per ounce because it's concentrated. So you're getting that much more lactose in there. And people get so turned off the protein powders after doing that. They're like, I'll never use a protein powder again. They all do this. They don't understand that there's different grades of isolate out there.
Right, exactly. Isolate's so good, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's back in the day, the protein powders were terrible. Everything had a ton of lactose. Luckily, when I was younger, I was able to handle a little bit of lactose in my diet, but everyone was farting their brains out in the gym because of these protein powders.
Bro. Yeah, I did too. I used to drink 3 glasses of milk with every single meal.
Oh my
and then,
God,
and then when I joined my fraternity in college, all my brothers would drink all the milk. So I didn't drink milk for like a year. And then the next time I fucking saw it. So I drank it and then I shat my brains out in our public restroom for like fucking.
You could literally shit your pants from that. Yeah.
8 hours. It was fun. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I'm a fan of this BPCT BKBV compounded that I get from Optimized HRT. That's been really nice because I think a lot of people, even a lot of honestly, most bodybuilders, even still to this day, it's just so easy for us we all like to train hard. And even though we talk about injury prevention, it just still doesn't happen. We still get fucked. No. It's so easy to, man. So, I mean, I'm really glad that stuff exists because I think it's been helping me because I've got shoulder problems and hip problems. Yeah, I take it every day. Yeah. Every day.
People are like, well, what do you inject it into? I said, because I have injuries there's always some place I can put it into. I said, the truth is, when you inject it, it does go systemically, but it seems to have a better effect when you put it right near the injury. It works a little more effective because you're getting a slightly higher concentration down there at that point. Like, let's say if your shoulder's hurting, you inject it into your shoulder, you're getting a higher concentration there.
Do you do it IM into your shoulder?
Yeah. If I have a shoulder problem, I'll do IM, but otherwise I'll do it subcutaneous. Like let's say like my ankle was hurting because I had ankle surgery. I'll lift the skin there and I'll put it under the skin in that area there. And it seems to work really well. The next day I'm out of pain. So I listen, I don't know what the stuff does, but it works. I can guarantee that it works because I got plenty of little aches and pains, nothing that's debilitating, knock on wood, but I have plenty that I can tell the difference when I take it versus I don't take it. Like if I go to the Olympia and I'm gone for almost a week, I'm feeling all my little injuries, because I don't take it with me, so I feel my injuries hurting me by the time I'm going home a week later. And so there's a definite difference from me taking it versus not taking it.
Okay. And regarding the GLPs too, when it first came out, I used to be against it just because I was I'm more of an easy gainer, and I'm like I just fucking can't fucking cut. I was a fat ass when I was a kid.
Oh, you were?
Like Fuad, I'd smash an entire pizza.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I would have never guessed.
Yeah. So it was more of like an obsession to stay lean. So when
Gotcha.
like I dieted on 1,100 calories the last 3 weeks of my first few shows. I think the show that I got my pro card was at like 1,100 calories, eating boxes of spinach. I was also like 167 on stage or something like that. So it's like
you don't lose muscle. In other words,
I don't know. With the amount of gear I take on these preps, probably not. But
Well,
Um,
some people just utilize protein better. Chris Aceto and I always joke that Akeem Williams, you can feed him like a bikini competitor, and the guy doesn't lose any muscle. It's unbelievable. He'll grow, matter of
that's
fact, like
sick.
that. Like, you don't have to give the guy a lot of food. But most people are not like that, but there are people that are just easy gainers, hard losers,
Yeah. But I mean, anyways, because of that though, I mean, when Reddit came out, I was like, damn, all these people have it fucking easy now. But straight up, I gotta be honest, like that shit's fucking nice now. Like,
well, it takes the edge off.
right? Yeah, this is the thing that I think I really do agree with. Obviously, I do not think it should be. I think it should be used at a very low dose if you're taking it during prep, and then you definitely need to take it out a couple weeks or so before your show.
Absolutely, you get that digestive system back. Yeah,
but Eric Janicki said this best when the GLPs were first discussed. And we talked about it on a podcast. Actually, I think I'm trying to remember if this was actually behind the scenes or if we talked on the podcast because it was a little bit personal, but it just helped so much with his family life. Just the amount of allostatic load and stress on his body because of prep, having that prep brain and having babies to take care of and a whole family to take care of and not being able to be present because of it. The GLPs just really helped with their family life a lot.
Right.
So, I mean, that's kind of cool.
You know what, guys in the 90s used to use Nubain for that purpose. Nubain just numbed you so you weren't hungry. The problem is it was addictive and it's an opiate. So
that's fire.
Not a good thing to become addicted to, but it worked, the same way. Yeah, but if you could take the edge off the appetite. Yeah, what?
Nubain, kratom, and darts.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the problem with I have with the GLPs. People want to stay on it all year round, and it really does slow the transit of nutrients through the intestinal tract. It slows your digestive tract down, so you're not going to be able to recover as quickly. And I really believe it will inhibit your ability to grow in the off season. You shouldn't take it in the off season. Save it for the contest prep. And matter of fact, I would save it for the last maybe 8 to 10 weeks of the contest prep. If you can do it, you know what I mean? That's when you start getting hungry, so, I don't think it should be used as a crutch all the time because I think it's going to ultimately negate some of the bodybuilding advantages of nutrient, think about it. Everyone's so preoccupied with post-workout nutrition. I got to get the stuff in fast. Well, if you want to get the stuff in fast, you don't want to be on a GLP-1 agonist. That's not the right thing to do. So.
Okay. Gotcha. You don't think that that change is pretty minuscule though? The amount, it slows it down in your post-workout window?
It slows the fuck out of absorption rates of food in the intestinal tract. It doesn't, it takes the motility that's normally moving, at a certain pace and it can cut it in half almost, That's why you feel satiated so long because the food is taking longer to be absorbed. And so I don't think you want to do that in the off season. It just my spidey sense says not good for muscle growth.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you on that. I have good spidey sense.
I've been doing this a long time.
Right. Especially if you're in the pro stage, you're eating a lot of fucking food, man.
Yeah.
You already have gut problems as is. Don't need to exacerbate.
Yeah, you don't want to back up all that food. You can get blockages too in the intestinal tract. You don't want to do that. That's a nightmare.
I did like it during my health phase though. Stallion, that was nice.
Yeah, look, for you fatties, it works great. Yeah.
Fatties for sure. Did you say before that it was Primo that you did for your first cycle? Like testing Primo or something?
Yeah, Primo and Winstrel.
No test?
No, I didn't.
Damn.
Because I didn't want to suppress my natural testosterone production. Back then, the prevailing, theory, according to Bill Phillips, was that if you took non-aromatizing drugs, that you wouldn't shut down your natural production. And I don't know if he was right or not, but I took 50 milligrams of Winstrel 3 times a week, and I took 100 milligrams of Primo twice a week, and I put on probably 15 pounds of muscle in about 10 or 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And no fluid retention. When I stopped it, my body just started producing. I never felt a lull in sex drive or anything like that. Worked great. And, you can't, it doesn't work like that forever. But on your first cycle, why use an atomic bomb when you can use a couple firecrackers to get the job done?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good analogy. I do think he was wrong though, for sure.
Yeah, I think it does suppress you a little bit, but probably not that severely though. Yeah.
I was taking orals though when I got my pro card. I only did oral only for the first 2 years or
really?
the first year or so. It was so stupid, dude. Yeah, it was. I didn't know what I was doing, so that's why I have this podcast.
Yeah, well, it worked though, so I mean, you can't deny the results. Listen, I've seen guys with good genetics that have, if you knew the cycles they did on stage, you'd quit bodybuilding. They're like doing like one shot of test a week. That's it, and they're competing. They look like they're on everything in the book. They look like they're on GH, 1,000 tests and 900 trend. And they're like, no, yeah, I don't have a job, or my job, I'm supporting like 5 kids and I can only afford to take testosterone once a week, And I'm like, are you serious? And those are the guys that go on to become great pros, eventually, because then they realize that they can take more than that. And when they do, they become super freaks, but
crazy.
There's a big genetic component to everything. That's just the way it goes.
What do you feel like was the best like average GH dose that you would take or that you would recommend to a client that was a pro?
To me, the sweet spot was 3 to 4 IUs a day. Yeah.
Okay.
I felt like more than that, I got really just bloated from it. I didn't notice that much more gains. And my belief with GH is that the length of time you do it is more important than how much you take per shot. So I just believe like if you stay on like 3, 4 IUs a day all the time, 365 days a year, I think you're gonna make the best gains. Because think about it, your liver can only produce so much IGF-1 in response to the GH you take. It's not like an unlimited, growth curve. Like, all right, if I take 30 IUs of GH, it's going to produce this much IGF. No, it's at some point you hit a ceiling where the liver says, sorry, I know you want me to produce more, but I can't produce anymore. And that's it. So you're kind of just wasting the GH and you're just making yourself more insulin resistant. And that's another thing. The more GH you take, the more insulin resistant you become, and it becomes harder to absorb your nutrients.
Yes.
So there's a sweet spot of about, like I said, I'd say it's probably like in that 3 to 6 IU range. That any more than that is going to go the other direction. And any less than 3, you might not get the ultimate, the best gains out of it. So less is better over a longer period of time.
It's always fun for me to ask this because everybody has a different response when it comes to this in the bodybuilding industry, because we all talk theories. That's where the fun comes in. I see 4 to 8 most often, which is pretty close to that. 4 to 6, 4 to 8.
You know what though? I want to just say one thing. I do want to say one thing, and I'm going to give Boston Lloyd, may he rest in peace, the credit for this. A lot of stuff is underdosed these days, and that was his rationale for taking the insane dosages that he took. But he's not wrong. I think a lot of the drugs, are gray market. They're coming from China. Who knows if they're storing them properly? I think the effect of, I felt like the GH I used back in the day was so strong. And I think a lot of the generic stuff that's out there from China and stuff like that is just not the same potency. I think it's real. I just don't think it's what they say it is. So guys are taking 8, they're probably really taking 4, that kind of thing.
Here's my personal experience, transparency. I tried Pharma grade GH and the regular UGA LGH that I had, and I really didn't feel much of a difference between those two. I do remember feeling a little bit of carpal tunnel when I did take them when I jumped up to 4 IUs, I think. But for the gear, I can tell you there was a substantial difference when I was taking Anavar and Winstrol from Transcend HRT and from Optimize HRT
versus the street. Yeah.
I mean, rip the Transcend, but when I was taking that shit, dude, compared to any of the other UGL, Anavar, and Winstrol I've ever taken, not only was I just blowing up, but I was also seeing some insane side effects. Just like the intensity period was just insane.
Right.
I was almost getting heart palpitations from the Anavar, and I was just seeing all of my hair fall out for the Winstrol. It was insane.
Oh, really?
It was absolutely nuts.
I tell all the women, I don't care what you got to spend, because you guys don't have to take a lot of stuff anyway. Always go to these clinics and get Anavar from the clinic, because you just can't risk, taking stuff that potentially can be dianabol, which a lot of times that's what it is. The Anavar is really dianabol. So, I mean, I sell these Roy test kits at DavePalumbo.com. I sell a ton of these things because everyone tests their gear now. At least you know what you're taking, if it's real or not, But unfortunately, I'd say 50% of the stuff out there is not what it says it is, and that's a big percentage,
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. Plus, like the dosages you're taking as a woman are so low anyways. Like, dude, you can totally afford
Spend
that
the money.
shit.
Spend the
Yeah, spend the
$300
money.
for the fucking bottle of Anavar.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
No, for sure. Plus, like some of these clinics are even selling the Winstrol Anavar for anywhere from 100 to 200 to 250 now too. So
That's
I mean,
cheap.
which
Yeah,
is
that's
I think
cheap.
is
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So whatever. I forgot the last thing I was going to ask, but that's good to know. Some
Right.
things we were discussing with other guys that I've talked to. We discussed other ways to use the GH, such as like with like Vigor Steve. He wants his preference right now, especially for himself, is like say like 8 to 10 IUs, but not every day. So like 5 days a week, for example, for the same sake of for insulin sensitivity. And then I think my discussion with Justin Harris and Evan Setapani, they both feel like maybe preferably use GH just during prep instead of using it just all year round. Evan Setapani says if he had to choose and he only wanted to use it for a portion of time, he would use it just during prep. And he felt like he still blew
for
up.
him getting lean is the hardest thing, and he's like you. He grows real easy. So
okay.
Yeah, you always have to. By the way, Vigorous Steve is one of the people I challenged to a debate, and he never responded. But just to throw that out there.
That's funny. That'd be cool. I do know that I do know that Steve does get interested, but then he flips back to like, fuck, I have too much to deal with a daughter already and all this shit. So it's just
he called me out, and so then I proved him wrong, and then I said, listen, we can debate this on if you want to come on, and then I never heard from him. So
what was the debate about?
You think I remember? It was something stupid that he was saying, probably about androgen receptors. I think it was about it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Fuck. Damn. Okay. And the androgen receptor thing, by the way, again, I forgot to ask this in the beginning when you were talking about it, but would you consider that upregulation, or would there be a different term for that when you were saying that you come off and it seems to in the nucleus, around the nucleus?
You mean upregulation? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Is that different from upregulation? Like when you were saying
you're upregulating the receptors, your numbers. Yeah, sure.
Like when you come off.
Yeah, you come off, and the receptors go from lower numbers to higher numbers by upregulating, because they say, we can't find testosterone. We need more receptors.
Yeah. And then when you jump on gear again, it also upregulates as you take more, or as you take it for longer.
I don't agree with that. And I've read the studies that these guys are waving people's faces. They don't say that. They're always in like these situations where they're old people that they never ever did anything, and they gave them testosterone, and they noticed that their androgen receptors upregulated in response to the first dose of testosterone. That's not the same thing as a bodybuilder who's taking cycles for months and months and months. You can't wave a study that was done on a population of people who don't even train. Okay, now that you're going to put them in the gym and you're going to give them testosterone, you're going to see in 1 week what their receptors do. That's not. You can't compare that to what goes on in a bodybuilder. I'm sorry. Read the studies. That's why I said, let's go over this. Send me the studies you want. Let's debate the study, because if the study's not relevant to the bodybuilding world, then you can't use it.
Do you mind if I just share my theory in full first before you say anything, and then you can tell me what you think about it? This is a theory that I brought up with Steve, and he kind of agrees with me on this. So what I believe is like that. As you grow bigger, like we both said, you tend to upregulate. You tend to have more androgen receptors because you're growing bigger, just for the fact that you're growing bigger.
But why? But what would be the body's reason for doing that?
Isn't that what you told me too in the beginning of the podcast, though?
I said if you produce more muscle nuclei, which happens during getting bigger, it has nothing to do with drugs. Getting bigger, you will have. If you add up all the receptors in the body, you're going to have more, because you have more nuclei now that need to react to the receptor.
That's what I'm saying.
On a specific nuclei itself, you're not. We have to talk about one nuclei and the number of receptors around that one nuclei, because that's, and then we can extrapolate it to everything else. You can't just say, well, quantity wise, you have more receptors. Well, of course you do. You have more muscle. The guy who's 300 pounds has more androgen receptors than the guy who's 200 pounds. That's by definition, right? Because he's got more muscle fibers and more nuclei.
That is what I'm saying.
You can't just say, well, then the androgen receptor taking testosterone is not causing that. They're not upregulating. You're saying that
it's growing in
testosterone
size.
you're taking No, what you're saying, you're saying is that the testosterone that you're taking is telling the nuclei to produce more receptors, and that's not true.
No, what I was just saying is growing bigger,
What
not
do you mean,
the testosterone you're taking. What I'm just saying is, as you said, growing bigger as you grow more muscle
So then
mass.
it would have nothing to do with the drugs you're taking then, in that case, because you can grow bigger without taking drugs.
You could, yeah, you could, but you probably
so as
grow
you
even
get
bigger
more
with taking
muscular,
drugs. You know what I'm saying?
You have more, your androgen receptor numbers are higher. It has nothing to do with the drugs, though. He's saying that the more drugs you take, the more androgen receptors you produce. That's not true.
That's why I think that the reason that those studies may make sense is just like, as you said, because it's on untrained guys. And as they take that test, they are actually growing more muscle because they're that sensitive.
Yeah.
They haven't trained, they haven't taken tests before. And then those androgen receptors increase. Maybe it doesn't happen for us for just taking gear in general, but the fact that we are growing muscle, that's what I'm referring to, is like,
well, maybe in a person who's
maybe
untrained,
they still increase. Yeah.
Niles, maybe in a person who's untrained, who starts training, their bodies upregulate the androgen receptors, because now the body's saying, this guy hasn't worked out ever. Now he's working out. We got to repair. We need more receptors to be able to respond to testosterone to repair this muscle tissue. That's why the short-term studies are not relevant to long-term, because our androgen receptors upregulated long ago to the training effect. They're not continuously upregulating. It only happens initially when the body says, oh, this guy's breaking down muscle tissue. We need more androgen receptors. And then they're at a higher level, but they're not continuously upregulating, forever. It's just an initial thing that would happen on a person who starts either training or getting a boost of testosterone to the body,
Okay. Yeah. So
it's not in perpetuity. You know what I mean?
And then what I was saying with the conversation I was having with Dr. Dean and Dr. Todd, I believe separately, is if you take more gear then I guess maybe the amount of androgen receptors you have can hold, some of that starts spilling over as side effects, like to your hair, your skin, etc., other places,
which makes
whatever.
Sense.
So like if you're bigger, then you can probably take more gear.
I don't know. I think it would be, if I was realistically looking at the whole situation, I would say a little more gear. Like, I don't think you're going to go from taking, 2 grams of gear a week to 6 grams a week. I don't think it's that significant.
No, for sure.
Might be an extra 200 milligrams a week we're talking about,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. Plus it's also, I feel like that would also help explain like why you can't just take a gram off the bat as your first cycle. You want to start, just like, as you said,
you don't need it.
You
just don't need
exactly.
it. It's
you don't need it.
Yeah. It's
right.
overkill.
Yeah. So anyways, that's just a conversation I like having, because I feel like people like to throw around the word upregulation everywhere and just say that means that like you could just, which I just think it's not true. Like as you stay on cycle for longer, it just doesn't respond as well. And then you have to take a break.
No, it's kind of like, but you know what? People get into this whole thing and they listen, bodybuilders love justification why they need to take more drugs. Because if they can justify in their mind taking more, which they want to do, everyone wants to take more, right? But if you can justify it, hey, if I take more, I'm going to get bigger. And if I take it longer and never go off, I'm going to grow even better. They want to believe the scenario that these people are presenting to them, because it sounds, yes, I don't really want to go off. And this guy's telling me I don't have to go off. And a matter of fact, if I don't go off, I'm going to be better off if I don't go off. So who are they going to listen to? Me, who's telling them to go off and they don't want to go off? Or are they going to listen to that guy? Well, they're saying that guy must know what he's talking about, because they want to believe that scenario. It's just, unfortunately, it's not true. Okay.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. There are some people that are a little bit more hypochondriac like me, though. I think that are in the other direction sometimes.
Yeah.
Like here I am, like blaming the amount of tests I'm taking on me feeling fatigued when I realize I should probably just take a goddamn deload. Fucking retarded. Okay.
It's amazing how fast you'll overtrain. Really, it happens to me a lot too. And sometimes I'm like, I think I trained 5 days in a row. No wonder why I feel, fatigued and why I feel flat. And I don't even realize it. The good thing is that I have my kids every other weekend, so it's usually 3 days where I'm not training at all. It's forced. I'm forced to take off. Like this Easter Sunday, I'll probably miss 4 or 5 days in the gym. When I go back next week, I'll have the best workouts of my life because it was forced rest. Because I have trouble taking days off. I do like going to the gym. I will admit that.
Yeah.
And so when I'm forced to take 4 or 5 days in a row off, it's almost like my body needed it anyway. So it works really well for me.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do this Q&A real quick.
Yeah.
If you're down.
Yeah. I'm running out of time.
Jesus Christ. I want to pick the good questions, but there's some fucking just random shit in here. Like Daniel asks, would you ever try Steve's bathmate protocol? I don't know if you know what his protocol was.
No, what is it?
It was like it was like HCG. Apparently, like if you do the bathmate and HCG together, your penis grows more than HCG alone or bathmate alone, or like the penis pump alone. So you do both of them together. And then you also do it like Cialis, so you stay hard during the penis pumping, and then like fucking like BPC or something like above, I don't know, close to the,
not that I'm trying to brag. Luckily for me, I don't have a penis issue problem. So I think that I don't need to do his protocol. Luckily for me, I know there's a lot of guys. Look, the guys that are the most obsessed with these penis like protocols are usually the guys that don't have enough, length going on. So, but that never really interests me because it's not a problem I have.
Wish I could say the same, Dave. Maybe I should just go back to dating.
I'm half Italian. We want to do.
Maybe I should go back to dating Asians instead again.
There you go.
Balls. Guerrero Rambo asks Dave's Slin /GH protocol. Did he combine Slin with his McDonald's diet? And does Slin make you fat
I used
that
to
way?
Back what I used to do, which I told you I'd probably modify nowadays, but I used to do a shot of GH in the morning, like 2 IUs, and I would take a shot of Humulin R, which was the regular insulin, has 2 peaks.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, you get half, and then you get the other half, 2 hours later. I would take 10 IUs in the morning of that. And then usually about 6 hours later, I would take my second shot of GH, another 2 IUs, and I would take 8 units of Humulin R, which would cover the next 2 meals. So I basically was covering the first 4 meals with the insulin. I wouldn't take any insulin after that because I didn't want to go low at night. At least that was my thinking. And I never took GH at night. I know a lot of guys take it at night. I am a big believer that your body produces it naturally at night. You want to take it early in the day when your body doesn't produce it, okay, and you're the most catabolic. So that's how I always did it, and it worked superb for me. So there would be nothing I would change about that, other than maybe I would take a long-acting insulin instead of these fast-acting ones.
What about the McDonald's with that? How did that work?
A lot of times my first meal of the day was always McDonald's. I would sleep till noon, 11, 12 in the afternoon, because I was convinced that if I slept through the morning, that I would be asleep during the peak cortisol hours of my body.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yes. I would have said that. I never had to worry about cortisol because the cortisol is only elevated in the morning. So I'd get up at noon. I would, shower. I'd go to McDonald's. I'd have my first McDonald's meal. I'd go tan. This is when I didn't have to work, when I was a bodybuilder, I was getting paid by metrics. And then I would go after I tan, I'd, maybe stop at my friend's bodybuilding store, chat with him a little bit, have a shake there. And then I would go to the gym and train. And so the insulin and GH was in my body already, for 4 hours or so. I felt great, and then I was pumped from the McDonald's meal and all the salt and, crap in there. And
fire.
I would have the greatest workouts. I never would train without at least 2-3 meals in me,
Okay.
And then I would eat all the way to 4 a.m. because, get all my meals in. So I would basically I would go to sleep at 4 a.m. and I would wake up at noon. That's my 8 hours, and I would take a nap during the day, usually for an hour.
So you don't feel like this would make you fat, taking insulin with McDonald's?
No, because I told you it only stores carbs as
I know. You did tell me that. It's just so crazy though. Maybe that's why Jordan. Maybe that's why Jordan, fucking Joe Palacios didn't get fat for his McDonald's insulin year or two.
Believe me, he's the biggest freak around right now.
But you guys are both freaks though. It's hard to listen to freaks.
Question, since that insulin stores glucose now that I've educated you, stores glucose as fat if your glycogen stores are loaded up. What's going to make you fatter? Milos's 300 grams of sugar with fast acting insulin, okay? Or McDonald's that probably has, all right, maybe 60, 70 grams of carbs max, right? But loaded with protein and saturated fat. The 300 grams of sugar. These guys get bloated. They look terrible on all that sugar because the sugar it's going right into the fat cells. Yeah, you're going to load glycogen, but once the glycogen stores are topped off, and in most people, it doesn't take much to top them off. The rest is going into fat storage. So unless you're using it as energy, you know what I mean? But who the hell is using 300 grams of sugar as energy, you know? So I think that it's people just have it all wrong in their head. They just don't know the science of it. Insulin only stores glucose as fat. That's all it does.
Okay. This is a good conversation, man. I have a lot of learning and research to do.
Yeah.
Rich Feeney asks, what's your IGF-1 L3 experience, or just IGF-1 in general? What's your IGF-1 experience?
Yeah, I've told this story. I don't believe the IGF-1 long R3 on the market now is the same as what I use. Or my new theory is that it's being deactivated. When I had access to the first real long R3 IGF-1, it was made by a company in Adelaide, Australia, known as GrowPep. They are the ones who patented it. And when I had a connection that was able to get it. I got it all the way back in 95. I was like one of the first people to use synthetic IGF-1. I had a really good connection. And these guys, they came wrapped in a yellow bag that blocked light. And it said right on there, do not expose to light. It deactivates this compound. And it was for research purposes only. I've never seen IGF-1 ever come in a light-proof bag nowadays. It's shipped just like everything else is, completely in a clear vial. I think a lot of the IGF-1 is becoming deactivated by light that it's exposed to, and that's why it doesn't work as well as it did. Because when I used IGF-1 at 10 micrograms a day, I had a vial of 200 microgram IGF-1. I used 20 days. I said this, I've told the story a lot of times. 20 days of it, 10 micrograms per day post-workout, I gained 20 pounds of muscle. I went from 289 over 300 pounds. It was the first time I'd ever gone over 300. I was stuck before that. And I didn't even take GH with it. I took it alone to see how it worked. And I thought I was getting on the scale every day and I was gaining a pound every day. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it.
That's insane. That's insane. So here, my story for current IGF-1, right? People have been asking how I blew up my legs. There's been some people asking my other people trying to get me to tell them what my plan with Patrick is. And I literally always say what my plan with Patrick was. So I do believe obviously the biggest thing is the training, but the only other thing that I had that was a variable that changed in my legs was my intake of IGF-1 that I was getting from Transcend at the time. Now that they don't exist, Optimize has that I'm taking, but I was taking 50 micrograms just on leg days and then shooting it bilaterally into each quad. And I mean, as far as the total mass I gained, I feel like it was still about an average amount of mass that someone at my level with my dosages would gain. It was like 7 pounds in like a year or so, for example. But I can tell you though, for sure, the leg growth and the size growth was pretty intense. Whether that was the training or the IGF-1 or both, I don't know, but definitely not 20 fucking pounds though.
No, it doesn't have. It really doesn't have a local effect, but I'm sure it became systemicized, so it was in your system. So it probably didn't matter that you injected into your legs, but you probably got some growth from it. The problem with taking a lot of another thing I realized from using IGF-1 is that if you take too much of it, it causes downregulation of the IGF-1 receptors really fast. And I think that's why people don't get sustained results from it. So they take it initially, they notice some good results the first couple of weeks, and then it just stops working. They don't continue to get that sustained result because I think they downregulate their IGF-1 receptors really quickly. So my suggestion when I recommend to people is take 10 to 20 micrograms a day, 4 weeks on, and then take 2 weeks off. And then you can repeat that. But don't take it continuously and don't take too much of it. I know it sounds like a small dosage, but you don't need a lot. A lot goes a long way with IGF-1.
Also though, like, I mean, you could say that doing it on just like your weakest muscle group also would be fine too, because then you're even taking more days off in that case, right?
Yeah, if you want. I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking it. Just take low dose. That's all.
Yeah.
How much IGF-1 do you really think your liver produces when you take a shot of GH? It's probably the equivalent of like less than 10 micrograms of IGF-1, that you would inject exogenously.
Okay.
And you get a good result from it. So it's the physiological dosages of it, that just that little burst of it is enough to initiate growth. And I think people have this idea that if I could amplify more IGF-1, I'll grow unlimited. And it just self-regulates itself really, really quickly. I did a lot of experimentation personally with this stuff, and I had the real stuff. And the more I took, the less it worked. And
Gotcha.
The best it worked was when I took less, over a short period of time.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. That's good to know. Thank you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Aaron Bound says, Jumbo Palumbo, let's go. In all caps. People are hyped that you were coming on the pod.
Oh, cool.
Danny Cashin asks, what would you optimize the rebound? How would you optimize the rebound after prep, provided bloods are good?
In terms of what?
Have you heard of like rebound versus reverse, or rebound versus like taking a health phase?
You mean after coming off a cycle? Is that what they're referring to?
Or like, no, like after a show.
After a show. After a show.
Like you're
I'm a big rebound guy after a show, because when you get your body fat to very low levels, your body wants to super compensate, meaning that even if you didn't train, just putting more nutrients into your body's going to build muscle from that. Now, if you combine that with working out, like I think a big mistake people take is after a show, like I'm going to take a month off. That's the worst time to take a month off. You want to go back to the gym and train because you're going to get the great rebound effect. All you got to do is put more food in there, keep your protein optimal, like we talked about before, 1.5 grams per pound, get enough carbs in without, overgorging, get your fat meals in. So you're getting enough essential fats because you need those raw materials to build muscle, and you'll grow even if you stop taking gear. I usually take guys off gear after a show, and because, you still have about 3 or 4 weeks in your system, and they all gain a ton of muscle because the body wants to build and it wants to hold because you've been torturing it for so long. And the leaner you got in contest prep, the better the rebound is every single time. It's like, because the more the body feels like it's being starved, the more it wants to build muscle after you start feeding it again. And so like I said, the biggest mistake people make is taking days off. Like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. I'm going to take a month off. Get back to the gym. You don't have to lift crazy heavy weights. Your body will grow. I promise you.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Dylan Magi asks, please ask you about your umbilical hernia recovery ? How long no gym?
When I had my umbilical hernia repair done, this is a true story. I was dating this girl, Colette at the time, she was a bodybuilder girl, and she picked me up. And of course, when we were coming back from the hospital, I'm like, we got to stop at McDonald's because I hadn't eaten all day, right? Because they don't want to eat before surgery. So this is a true story. Pull into the lot, and as we're pulling in, I'm like laid back and because I didn't want to like sit up because it was bothering my stomach. I was laid back so you couldn't see that I was in the car in the passenger seat. She's driving my car, and some guy didn't like something she did with the car pulling in, and he said, "Fuck you," or something like that to her. And I got insane. I couldn't believe that because he didn't see me. That's why he was saying that. So he was being a bully. I hate bullies. So I'm like, stop the car. She's like, what are you going to do? You just had surgery. I said, no. I said, I get out of the car. I said, what did you say to her? And now he looks at me, I'm a pretty big guy, obviously. He's like, she doesn't know how to fucking drive or something. He said something obnoxious. I said, you know what? You can go F yourself. He said, what are you going to do about it? So I poked him in the chest with my finger, like really hard. And he's like, I'm calling the cops. You assaulted me. I said, you can tell him I poked you in the chest. I said, you're nothing but a bully. You're a little pussy. Get out of here. And now it was insane what I was doing, because if I would have gotten into a fight, I just had umbilical hernia surgery, But the point I'm making is it's like getting a pimple popped. It's not a big deal. The key is you got to just relax for about a week or two. I was back in the gym training after 2 weeks. It wasn't a big deal. The whole, I think a lot of guys just think surgery, oh my God, it's a terrible thing. It's a very easy repair. It really is the easiest thing you could possibly go through. Don't even give it, just get it done.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Then add that BPC on top. Think about that.
Yeah, I would definitely do BPC. Yeah, absolutely.
That's hilarious, bro. I just had a discussion with Skip Hill, and he was talking about how he got in this big lawsuit because he poked he fucking.
Oh, he poked someone too.
No,
Yeah,
it was less of a poke. It was more of just like, you know, like when you're like oh, you're so cute thing, and you do a little like pat on the. Fucking,
Oh, the
he
guy
did a pat on the
sue?
face to this Uber driver, and this guy tried to sue him.
I can't believe it.
Said he hit him.
People are very crazy these days. Yeah, I usually just laugh when people say like curse at me. I laugh at them. I'm like, I wish that you. I hope that you have a very peaceful day. Namaste. You know, I give one of those deals.
I just can't believe, like, how can you call yourself a man if you're just suing a guy for doing that? That's insane.
Yeah.
All right, we'll just ask one last question. I'm sorry, guys.
One last.
Right. I know if you're ever up for it, you had like fucking 50 questions. So
we can come back and do a Q&A separately, but unlike Captain America, I can't do this all day.
Man, there's so many people that are just okay. Pichu, personal trainer, asks leg training when you were at your best with all exercises in the right order, sets and how many reps.
If you don't free weight squat, you're never gonna have big legs. Okay, that's the best piece of advice I can give you. If you want beautiful, thick, dense, separated legs, you have got to squat, full range of motion, wide stance. Everyone with great legs squats. Yes, there's always the one person who claims they didn't squat and they had great legs, but they're genetic freaks. We don't include them in this discussion. Every person who's built a great pair of legs have squatted. And so that was always the cornerstone of every leg workout I did. Whether it be pre-contest or it be off-season, I always squatted. Now, sometimes I might have done leg extensions first. I moved it around, but I always squatted, you know, as the primary focus. Everything else was just icing on the cake. So I would squat 4 to 5 sets, you know, because I'd have to build up because I was a pretty good squatter. At one point, I was squatting 700 pounds.
Yeah,
but,
you have to do a lot of fucking feeder sets.
You have to feed up to it. But once I got up to that set, I would go and then do either 2 sets of hack squats or 2 sets of leg press, never in the same workout. So I would pick one or the other. I'd usually rotate back and forth. And then I would go and do leg extensions, and I would do my hamstring workout would be leg curls, usually like laying down leg curls, maybe 3 sets, and then maybe 2 sets of standing leg curls, one leg at a time. That was it. And I left. And I went, and believe me, I didn't want to do any more after that. You shouldn't want to do any more after the squat workout part of it, because that's the part that you should want to go home after that. That's really what you should do. If you don't feel that way, then you haven't given 100% to the process. But guys are so lazy these days. They're doing Smith machine squats. They're doing the squat machines that are not even comparable. They're not even 10% comparable to free weight squats. I promise you, if you did no other exercise but then just squats and left the gym, you'd have great legs. Okay. And I stick by that even to this day. You know, I wish I could squat like I used to. You know, I had a quad tear a couple of years back, and I have an ankle fusion, but you know, I still train my legs. I still train them. I love training legs. I love to hate training legs. That's the thing. I mean, you got great legs, you know, you gotta go all out. It sucks. It hurts. The nervous system is traumatized after. You can't sleep, you know, you don't want to eat. That means you trained them right, you know?
I agree with I agree with you have to go all out. But I also I think, I don't know. I feel like I have to debate you on the topic for free weight squats specifically. Like for me, for example, like when I was blowing up my legs, I did do a lot of barbell back squats. I think for some people though, depending on their physique or on their like the dimensions of the physique, sometimes it's harder for them to do proper form free weight squats. Sometimes they end up loading their lumbar a little bit more than something else. So like for example, I think I did a majority of my compounds on like hack squats.
Well, you want the solution to that? Every bodybuilder should be going to their podiatrist and having a pair of custom orthotics made for their feet to correct whatever the arch deficit or foot strike deficit is. You wear them in your shoes all the time, not just when you squat. You put them in all your shoes, and you'll see your leg development change. All your knee problems when you're squatting, your back problems will go away because now you're correcting the alignment of how your spine is set up, because your feet are the pedestals that hold everything.
Yeah.
And if the feet are off a little, I have no arch. I have flat feet, so I have no arch. But there are some people that have, a partial arch deficit. Now load them up with 500 pounds on their back, and that arch goes boop. And now instead of the feet sitting like this, they're sitting like this. And so now your back is torqued, your knees are torqued, your groin is torqued, and you start getting weird pains and weird positions. And you throw out your back, your knees hurt, because your alignment is off. You correct that alignment with the custom orthotics. They're not cheap. They're about $300, $250, $300. But I'm telling you, it's as valuable as having a weight belt and all the other equipment we use in the gym. You got to wear them. If you do, you'll thank me. Your leg development will change, because I see a lot of guys that are very quad heavy, and then they have no glutes and hamstrings and inner thighs because they can't sit back on their heels and push, because they're always falling forward when they're squatting. And that's why guys put plates under their feet, or they go and try to use machines. But you can fix the problem. Just get a pair of custom orthotics. And when you buy your sneakers, especially the ones you squat in, make sure they're higher in the back. So you want to get like the Nike Air Maxes or something. You don't want to get these basketball shoes where the front is higher than the back, because you need to push from your heels. So you need to be higher up in the back a little bit. And so if you do that, I promise you it will change your leg workouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And the guys that squat barefoot it's the stupidest thing of all time, because then you have no arch support whatsoever. You have no shoe there, nothing. You're asking for problems. Don't squat barefoot.
I do. Yeah. I've had squat shoes for a really long time, and I fucking love squatting with a little elevated heel. Okay. I ask every guest one last question at the end of every podcast, but if you were to disappear from the world tomorrow and you had one message you could send to the entire world today, what would the message be?
That's a pretty loaded question. I needed probably a year to think about that. You know what my message would be? Don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do. Follow your heart. Follow what you want. I had people telling me that I would never be a successful bodybuilder. And I've helped other people who, like, I was just talking to Guy Cisternino the other day. And a lot of people told him, you'll never turn pro. You don't have the structure. And I said, Guy, why are you listening to these morons? If you can envision it in your mind, you can achieve it. And that's 100% true. I've seen people with the worst genetics, I thought, of all time, and they've achieved physiques that are incredible because they believed in themselves. They were passionate about what they did, and they applied 100% effort to the process, and they never quit. And that's it. You can only fail if you quit. And it's usually the people quit right before they're about to make the greatest leap and success in their career. Don't quit. There's my advice. Don't quit. Keep going.
Hell yeah. Thank you, brother. That was awesome.
Thanking you.
Sorry for keeping you for so long.
No, it's okay. I missed a meal, so I lost a muscle. I'll blame you.
Fuck. All right.
Let me know when it's going to go up. And if you make any reels, collaborate with me and RX Muscle. We'll share it.
All right. Sounds good, man. Let me know if you ever need anything too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. Bye.
Peace, brother.